Welcome to the most in-depth Twilight plot explanation video y'all will ever see. I have gone through all the books. I've seen the movie several times. I have gone through the archives on the author's website. I've read the companion novel. I'm explaining all the lore to y'all today. Y'all are not missing out on a single detail, and it's gonna be a ride. It truly is, especially when you realize that book one really just takes place from January to March. The epilogue goes into May, but January to March is really that timeline, so we are moving fast over here. Get comfy, get cozy. Y'all are gonna be here for a while, but I'm happy that y'all are here. And if y'all enjoy this video, please make sure to hit the like button. It really does help a girl out. And I'm of course going through the first 4 books, but if y'all want the novella, Midnight Sun, Life and Death, any of those additional books, let me know and I will start preparing those for you guys as well. Also, if you want to see more content from me / you don't want to miss out on another one of these videos because New Moon is coming out very, very soon, make sure you're subscribed. But without further ado, let's talk about Bella and her adventures in Forks. Before the book officially begins, we actually have a scene that will come back into play at the very end. We're in Bella's POV, obviously we're in her POV for the entire book, and she's thinking to herself, wow, I've never given much thought in how I would die, but it would not have been like this. It really wouldn't have. And as Bella is thinking this, she is looking directly into the eyes of the hunter, thinking, if I had never moved to Forks, I would not be experiencing this right now. I would not be having to face this hunter right now, but I cannot bring myself to regret that decision because life had given her a dream beyond her wildest expectations. So how could she ever regret that? And at this moment, the hunter smiled at her and made his way towards her. Now let's get into chapter 1. Chapter 1 begins with Bella's mom, Renee, driving her to the airport on a sunny, beautiful day in Phoenix, Arizona. Bella is wearing a sleeveless top and her carry-on is a parka. And if you're wondering, where are they going whenever they get to the airport? How exciting they're going on a trip. Bella is the only one going on a trip. Renee is not going. Bella is actually moving to Forks, Washington, which is a very, very rainy small town, to go live with her dad, Charlie. Charlie has been in Forks basically his whole life, but Bella had only lived in Forks for like a couple months at most before Renee got up and left and brought Bella with her. A little bit of timeline, because I did not know this until I read the books. Bella was born in September. Renee moved out of Forks with Bella in December. So Bella truly only lived in Forks permanently for 2 months. Now I will say every summer until she was about 14, she would go stay with Charlie for about a month in Forks. When Bella turned 14, she finally voiced her opinions on Forks to Charlie, saying that she hated Forks, it was rainy, it was dreary, it was gloomy, no more. And so from that point forward during the summers, Charlie would actually come meet her for about 2 weeks on like a little vacation. So Charlie went from getting a whole month with Bella throughout the summer to just 2 weeks because she, just like her mom, hated Forks. And as I just said, she hates this place and this is where she's moving to. Now, if you're asking yourself, if Bella hates this town so much, why is she moving in with her dad instead of just staying with her mom? Great question, great question. Renee, she is with Phil, and Phil is a minor league baseball player. So he travels around a lot, and Bella can tell that her mom is so sad that she doesn't get to go with him, and she misses him, and she knows that this is the best decision for her mom if Bella goes to live with Charlie. And this was not Renee's idea one bit. Renee literally is like, are you sure this is what you want to do? I promise you, like, you do not have to move to this town. And Bella in her heart is like, no, I need to do this for you. But there is a split second right before she goes to get on her plane where Bella is thinking, oh my gosh, how is my mom gonna be able to fend for herself without me? Renee's child is thinking, who is going to take care of my mother if I'm not there? So this kind of goes to show that Bella really is the more mature one / an old soul, which the book really hounds in that point as we go forward. Y'all will see. She does end up shaking that thought out of her head because she has to remind herself, oh yeah, my mom has Phil now. She will be okay. She has someone to take care of her and I will go to Charlie. So she gets on her flight. It is a 4-hour flight to Seattle, and then it's an additional flight to a small city called Port Angeles on a very, very tiny plane. And then I believe it's another hour car ride with Charlie. And the only part of this trip that Bella is dreading is the car ride with Charlie because they're both kind of socially awkward people and she hates small talk. Charlie is so happy that Bella has decided to come stay with him. Of course, he is very confused, but he's like, you know what? I'm not going to question it. I know she doesn't like this town, but I'm not going to question it because I get my daughter full time Like, this is so exciting. He's already enrolled her in school. He has gotten her a truck. I also just want to note that Charlie's like low-key a hotshot in Forks, at least in my mind. At least in my mind he is, because he's the chief police. He is thriving in the city of Forks. He absolutely loves it. And I think he's been here his whole life. Charlie still lives in the same house that he lived with when he was married to Renee. It is a small 2-bedroom home. When Bella walks into the house, she knows that it is impossible to miss the fact that Charlie is still in love with Renee and he still misses her, because it is the exact same. The only difference is, instead of there being a crib in Bella's room, it is now a bed. Like, genuinely, everything has stayed the same, as if no one else has ever touched it. And parked in the driveway is the truck that Charlie was telling Bella about, and to her surprise, because she was actually a little worried that she wasn't going to like it at all, she loved it. She loved it so much. She notes that it's probably the safest thing for her because it is bulky, it is big, and it would probably protect her while she's on the road, because apparently she's a little accident prone. When they're in Charlie's house, Charlie lets her go do her own thing. Bella literally thinks to herself, the best thing about Charlie is that he doesn't hover. While Bella is unpacking, she starts to cry a little bit, but then she's like, no, this was the right decision. You can cry later tonight, but right now we are unpacking and we are getting ready to spend our lives here in Forks. Bella was super nervous to be attending Forks High School because this is a very, very small town, which means the high school is very, very small. I believe the total amount of kids in this high school is 357, now 358, and that is itty bitty. Genuinely, the majority of people that attend this school have known each other since they were in diapers. There are some exceptions, of course, but they have known each other their whole lives, and their families have probably known each other their whole lives. This is also the beginning of Bella's "I'm not like other girls" mentality. She's like, I'm not tall, I'm not athletic, I'm a klutz, I'm so clumsy, I'm not tan, I'm not blonde. She's just so different. She is so different. Yeah, this mentality actually kind of stretches throughout the whole series, so get prepared for that. And not only is Miss Bella Swan not like other girls on the outside through her appearances, she's not like them on the inside either. She has always been called an old soul. Her mother, Renee, literally used to tell her, I swear you were born a 35-year-old woman. Like, I swear you came out of the womb as a 35-year-old. You are just an old soul. And because she grew up hearing this, she honestly thought something was wrong with her. Like, maybe there was a glitch in the system or just something she wasn't seeing properly, because she didn't look at life the same way everyone else did. This will come back into play later. Make a mental note of that, please, ladies and gents. The night before she's supposed to start school, Bella cannot sleep. It is raining, the wind is whipping, and she's starting to feel a little claustrophobic. But she pushes all of those thoughts down and she's like, no. I am doing this for a reason. I am doing this for my mother. We're fine. It is okay. It's great. She eventually goes back to sleep. She wakes up the next morning and it is time to start Forks High School. The lady at the front desk was so helpful and nice to Bella. She highlighted exactly where Bella needed to go on the map, and she told her that at the end of the day, please make sure you come back here with all the little slips that the teacher signed. That way we know that you made it to all your classes. And Bella actually made sure to get to school early that day so she could talk to the lady at the front desk. So when they were done talking, she actually had a little time to herself. So she went back to the parking lot and she's kind of just looking at all the cars in the parking lot. And a lot of the cars actually look very similar to Bella's in the fact that, like, they're old, they're probably family cars. And she's thinking to herself, wow, I would stick out like a sore thumb back in Arizona because we had people driving like Mercedes there. But no, here it just works and it fits in. The fanciest car that she sees is a shiny silver Volvo. That is the fanciest one, and it'll come into play later. Bella's first class is English, and she zones out because she's literally already learned everything that the teacher is talking about. After this class, a boy comes up to Bella, and the author described him, and I quote, as a boy with skin problems and black hair. Great description, okay? That poor boy. And the boy is actually really nice. A tad overwhelming, but very nice. He goes up to her and he goes, you're Isabella Swan, right? Where's your next class? I can walk you to it. My name is Eric. This is Eric, the boy with skin problems and black hair. Our first potential friend is Eric. And they're making some small talk as they're walking to her next class. He is basically carrying on this whole conversation, asking like, where are you from? Oh, Arizona. Oh, do you miss the sun? Oh, if you're from Arizona, why are you so pale? He actually asks that, by the way, and it's really giving Karen from Mean Girls. It really is. Anywho, Bella sarcastically responds to him saying, oh, my mom is actually half albino. And Eric's like, okay. And Bella's now thinking to herself, great. Not only is it rainy and dreary and gloomy here, but also no one understands sarcasm. I'm gonna have a great time here. Awesome. Clearly she's really thriving. Her next class is trig, and the teacher literally makes her go to the front of the room. He makes her say something about herself to everybody, and she trips up on her words, and she's like, this was the worst experience of my life because my face just got extremely red. That was so embarrassing. Why would he make me do this? This class is horrible and is the bane of my existence. But to be very fair, I wouldn't like that either. I would be very upset if they made me go to the front of the class on my first day. Like, what am I supposed to say? Hi, my name? Ugh. I got nothing else prepared. I do get her on that one. After this unfortunate moment occurs, she actually starts to recognize people because it is such a small school that there's a lot of overlap within her schedule and other people's. And so she actually has a place to sit at lunch. And Bella is trying to keep up with 7 different conversations because that is the amount of people hounding her / the amount of people that can even sit at this table. Like, they are literally surrounding her, trying to get to know her. And while she's trying to keep up with all these conversations, this is the first time she sees them. In the corner of the cafeteria, there were 5 of them. They weren't talking, they weren't eating, they weren't people watching like Bella, they weren't doing anything. There were 3 boys and 2 girls. One was buff with dark curly hair. One was lean and still and had honey blonde hair. And then the last boy was lanky, less bulky, still strong, and had very untidy bronze hair. And he was described as more boyish, whereas the other ones literally could be mistaken as like a college student or even a teacher. Like, they looked older than everyone else. Now for the girls. One was tall, blonde, and literally looked like she belonged on the cover of a Sports Illustrated magazine. Other was pixie-like. She was tiny and she had short, dark hair that was pointed in all directions. Literally like the first movie, and I wish they would have kept her hair like this throughout all of the movies. But I digress. And Bella notes that even though they are all drastically different in their appearances, they somehow all look the same. They were all very, very pale, paler than Bella, which she didn't think was humanly possible. And guess what? It's not humanly possible. They had very, very dark eyes with extremely dark and heavy shadows underneath them. Bella literally compares these dark circles / shadows under their eyes to someone getting their nose broken and it just in like its last stage of healing. That is how heavy it is. And Bella is still actively staring at them, mind you. Like, genuinely is zoning out, looking at them, being like, and she ends up asking a girl at her table, like, who are they? And the girl's like, oh, that's Edward, Emmett, and Alice Cullen, and Rosalie and Jasper Hale. They all live with Dr. Cullen and his wife, Esme. And Bella's thinking to herself, wow, what weird names these kids have. They literally sound like they were born in my grandparents' generation. Crazy. We eventually learn the name of the girl that is explaining all this to Bella, and her name is Jessica. Jessica continues explaining everything about the Cullens that she possibly can. She's like, they're all together, by the way. Like, Emmett and Rosalie, they're together. Alice and Jasper, they're together, which is kind of weird because they all live together in one house. And Dr. Cullen is really, really young, like late 20s, early 30s at most. And he adopted all of them. The Hales, which is Rosalie and Jasper, they're actually related. And their foster children, they've been with Esme since I think they were like 8 or something like that. Bella responds as, wow, like that is so nice of Esme to do that. And Jessica responds with, yeah, I guess. I think she only did it because she couldn't have kids of her own. What a horrible statement. Bella literally is thinking to herself, it sounds like Jessica said that just to try and lessen the good deed that Esme did. To try and make this amazing thing that Esme did into like, oh, that's why. Like, this is the reason she had to do this. Horrible. Horrible. And also, if you couldn't tell, everything I just told you is not their actual backstory and lore. This is just what the kids of Forks High School believe. Bella is back to staring at them, and the youngest Cullen actually meets her gaze, and Bella notes that he is looking at her as if he has already come across some unmet expectations from her when she hasn't done anything but just stare at him. Make a mental note of this moment because we will come back to this and explain why he was like a little confused or just bizarre when looking at her for the first time. Jessica goes, oh, that's Edward. But don't even think about it. He doesn't date. I guess none of us are good enough for him, even though he's so beautiful. And Bella, looking at Edward, he's no longer staring at her, but Bella swears that he must have heard what Jessica said even though he's halfway across the room, because he's laughing and smiling to himself. But that would be impossible that he could hear from that far away, right? Bella also made another friend at this lunch table, and her name is Angela, and Angela is actually in Bella's next class after lunch, which is biology. And oh my goodness, guess who is in biology as well? Guess who is also in this biology class? Edward Cullen. Not only is Edward Cullen in this class, he is very dramatic, very, very dramatic, and the only seat available is the one next to him. And so while the teacher is telling Bella, hey, there's an empty seat next to Edward, you can just sit there, Edward is pissed. He literally looks like he is about to strangle somebody. He is so upset. His eyes were described as black as coal. And Bella sits down and she's feeling very uncomfortable because this guy is very angry. He looks insane. And she's like, I'm not gonna look at him. But in her peripheral vision, she sees him like inching further away or like covering his nose. And she's like, do I stink? Is it me? Am I the problem? Like, what is going on? And this is my favorite scene in the movie because she noticeably sniffs herself. It's so funny and campy. And in the book, she literally smells herself and she's like, it's not me. I smell like strawberries. And so as I said, Bella is sitting very uncomfortably. She's trying so hard to ignore this strange, angry emo boy and pay attention to the teacher. But the teacher is talking about something Bella has already learned. So she's just bored and is struggling. This is also her first day of school. Like, little unfortunate occurrence. I don't even know what I would do in that position. I probably would also smell myself. In like 0.2 seconds before the bell is supposed to ring, Edward is up. He is up and he is out of the room, and she says that he almost glides out of there like very, very gracefully. But she's like, the bell hadn't even rung yet and he was already up and almost gone. Like she literally hadn't even had time to scoot her chair out by the time he was already out the door. We meet one final person on her first day of class, and it is Mike. He's in the biology class, and he goes up to her and he goes, oh, what's your next class? Is it gym? I have gym. Let's walk together. Oh my, Mike, you are a chatterbox. He is talking up a storm. And we learn everything about him from this walk to biology to gym. We learn he used to live in California, so he understands the going from a ton of sun to rain, rain, rain. He completely gets how Bella is feeling. And then as they're walking, he changes the subject to, what did you do to Edward Cullen? I have never seen that dude act like that ever. Normally he's so emotionless, and he looked like he was in physical pain. He doesn't let Bella get a word in because he goes, if I was lucky enough to sit next to you, I definitely would have talked to you. I would have just happily talked to you the whole time. So this is a little bit of a difference between the books and the movies because this walk to class is where she meets Mike, whereas in the movie, I believe she meets him in gym class. Like, I think gym is before all her other classes for some reason. I could be wrong on that note, but I'm pretty sure. And that's also where she meets Jessica, whereas in the book, we met Jessica in the cafeteria. We met Mike at the very end of bio. So some of the encounters have changed a wee bit. Gym was Bella's last class of the day, so when the bell finally rings, she makes her way to the office to go bring all her slips to the lady at the front desk. When she walks in, she sees Edward very agitated, arguing with the sweet lady at the front desk, like, get me out of biology. I don't care what you have to do. Get me out of the class. And Edward doesn't realize that Bella is in the room until somebody opens the door and this whoosh of wind moves Bella's hair. And then immediately he's like, and Bella literally notes that for a split second, she was fearful of him in this moment. He turns back to the lady and he goes, never mind. Clearly it's impossible. And he bolts out of the door. He abruptly leaves. And Bella is like, what could I have done to this random, beautiful human to make him hate me? This brings us into the next school day, and the next day was better, but it was also worse. It was better because it wasn't raining. Bella kind of, to some extent, knew where she was going. Mike would talk to her in English. He'd walk her to the next class. Eric was glaring at Mike for some reason, but who cares? Not glaring at Bella. She had somewhere to sit during lunch. It consisted of all these people plus someone named Lauren. So sorry to Lauren, but I didn't think she was important enough to print a picture out for. Again, so sorry, Lauren. So whenever I talk about her, we will just speak instead of pointing. No big deal, no big deal, we'll roll with the punches. And this day at school was worse for Bella because she didn't sleep the night before. The same teacher that made her go up to the front of class on her first day called on her today when her hand was not raised and she did not know the answer, and she was embarrassed yet again by this trigonometry teacher. They forced her to play volleyball in gym. And finally, Edward Cullen wasn't there that day. After school, she discovered that Charlie literally can't cook anything except eggs. And so Bella's like, you know what? I will do all the shopping. I will do all the cooking. Don't worry about it. So Bella decides to go to the store because they don't have anything except for eggs and then fish. On her way to the store, she sees the shiny silver Volvo and she sees 2 Cullen siblings and the Hale twins. So obviously that is Emmett and Alice, the Cullen siblings, and Rosalie and Jasper, the Hale twins. That is who she runs into. And she just sees them in their car. Like, it's not like she's going to see them in person in store. She just sees them in her car, and they're acting weird because they also notice her. This is another scene that will come back into play later as to why they're all kind of staring at her very, very weirdly. She makes it back home from the store. She cooks them dinner. She goes upstairs and she sees that she has 3 missed emails from her mom. This right here, right now, is showing the year that this book was published and takes place in, because she's using email instead of a cell phone. I believe it's like early 2000s, like 2005. Why her mother isn't calling the landline, I don't know, and I will never know, but her mother is flipping lipping like, I haven't heard you yet. If I don't hear from you in like an hour, I'm calling Charlie. What are you doing? Why haven't you answered me? Like, literally blowing her up via email. And Bella responds with, don't call, I'm doing fine. This is the first time I've been able to check my email. I'm perfectly fine, having a great time, love ya. Whereas in the movie, she talks to her mom on her cell phone. We're communicating via email. Because there is about 3 to 4 years in between the books and the movies whenever they take place. So technology had definitely improved. We learned that Bella is a reader. She loves Wuthering Heights. She loves Sense and Sensibility. She loves Mansfield Park. Like, we learned that she's a big classics girly. So that's really what she's doing in her free time until Charlie comes home and they make their awkward small talk. And there's a little bit of a lull in their conversation, obviously, because they are both awkward human beings. They love each other, but they are both really awkward. And Bella sees her opening where she's like, oh, do you know about the Cullens? What's happening with the Cullens? Let me know everything, Charlie. Tell me. And Charlie loves the Cullens, literally loves them. And he is saying anybody who says that those kids are weird need to back off, because even though they are not from here, I have never had a problem with that family. Some of these people, and by these people, I don't mean them specifically. I just mean people that have grown up here, their families lived here their whole lives, yada, yada, yada. He's had problems with, but never the Cullens. Dr. Cullen is an amazing surgeon, and this town is so lucky to have him because he really could be paid a whole lot more at a more prestigious hospital. But luckily for us, his wife Esme wanted to live in a small town. So Charlie is team Cullen family. He loves them. After Charlie discusses the Cullens, dinner is pretty silent, but Bella says that this is actually a very comfortable silence. Like, she doesn't feel awkward or anything like that. Like, this is a very livable silence, and she's very happy for that. So after dinner, she does the dishes. Charlie's watching TV. She goes upstairs to do her homework, and the rest of the week is so uneventful because Edward Cullen is nowhere to be found at school. Doesn't show up at all. Bella is actually starting to feel so much more comfortable in Forks than she could have ever imagined. The next week when they're all walking to class, it actually starts to snow, and Bella's like, are you kidding me? And Bella doesn't like this. Again, she's from Arizona. She likes warmth, sun, heat, not snow, not rain. And so Bella's like, oh, there goes my good day. Beautiful. She walks into the cafeteria and she sees that in that far corner are 5 of the members of the Cullen family, which means Edward is back in town. And Jessica says, Bella, what are you looking at? And as soon as Jessica says this, it is like Edward can hear her because he whips around and he stares at her. Literally is staring at her eyes from across the room. Except this time, he doesn't look angry. His eyes are not as black as coals. There's no need to be scared. He's not angry. And this is not in Bella's imagination, because Jessica literally goes, Edward Cullen is staring at you. The Cullens literally never notice anybody, but Edward Cullen is staring at you. And Bella's like, me? She's probably not like that, but that is how I envisioned it. It is now time for biology. Bella gets there and she sees that Edward isn't in class, so she's thinking, oh, maybe he actually did transfer, so she's just kind of doodling, doing her own thing. She hears the chair next to her move. She hears a very soft hello, my name is Edward Cullen. You must be Bella Swan. And Bella's like, what? How do you know my name? And Edward says, oh, I think everyone knows your name. The whole town's been waiting for you to arrive. And she says, no, I meant, why did you call me Bella? Everyone else has been saying Isabella whenever they first meet me. And being the great conversationalist that Edward Cullen is, just goes, oh, and the conversation has died. There's no reviving it at this point in time. Today they are doing a lab where they are having to use their microscopes to separate their onion root tip cells into the different stages of mitosis. Edward actually lets Bella go first, and remember, Bella has already learned literally everything that Forks is teaching at this moment in time, so she's already done this lab, and so she immediately knows what she's looking at. And so very confidently Bella's like, prophase. Edward's like, do you mind if I take a look? And Bella was already starting to remove this slide as he was saying this, and so their hands touch, and she is thinking to herself, oh my goodness, he is so cold, but that's not why she jerked away. She jerked away because she felt like she was almost struck by lightning when they touched, like there was some kind of electricity. And she notes that it's not just her that reacted this way, he did as well. But he moves past this, he confirms like, yeah, that was prophase. He's very careful when he removes the next slides, as is she, as they go back and forth throughout this routine until they finish. Obviously, they're the first ones to finish, so they have a little more small talk. And by small talk, I mean that she's looking at him again and she goes, do you wear contacts? Your eyes didn't look like that last time I saw you. Last time they were black, but now they're like kind of golden. And he's like, nope. And he looks away, not in a suspicious way at all. But Bella can't really ask anything else because this is when the teacher comes back in the room. He goes, Mr. Cullen, you really couldn't have let Isabella help you out? Edward looks at the teacher and goes, Bella actually helped name half of these. The teacher leaves them be. He's handling other students, and it's time for more small talk, emphasis on small. And he goes, you must really hate the snow, right? And Bella's thinking to herself, what? How did he know this? It's almost as if he heard my conversation at lunch with Jessica. Almost as if. But she brushes that off and she's just like, not really. Sure, whatever. Edward responds with, Forks must be a really hard place for you to live. Why did you even come here? And I can keep up if it's a long story. Like, feel free to explain. Here's more of the background. Bella tells him that her mother remarried. Obviously, she married Phil. Phil is a minor league baseball player, and so he travels a lot. So she moved here so Renee would be able to go with him because she could tell that her mother was unhappy having to stay home. And Edward points out, but now you're unhappy being here. I feel like that is not fair. And you put on a good show, but I'm guessing you're suffering more than you let others see. Bella's getting irritated because she feels like she's getting psychoanalyzed by this guy who's just started talking to her. And she's like, what does it matter to you? Why do you care? And he mutters, that is a really great question. A little time passes and he goes, am I annoying you? And he almost says this like in an amusing way. And Bella responds with, no, I'm more annoyed that my face is just so easy to read. Edward says, I actually find it pretty hard to read. The bell rings, class has finally ended. Edward doesn't pop up and move as quickly as he did last time. He still moves gracefully, almost like a glide, but he isn't like sprinting to get out of there. And Mike pops up at Bella's side because they are about to go to gym class together. He goes, Cullen seemed really friendly to you today. And for the rest of the day, Bella found herself struggling to focus on anything else except Edward. The school day has ended. She's in the parking lot. She sees Edward leaning against his shiny silver Volvo. And as she's backing out, she actually almost hits another car. And she literally swears that she sees him laughing. Like, she's positive that this boy is laughing at her. So there's like another cute moment. Something about the next day felt so different for Bella. There was no rain, there was no fog, but to Bella's dismay, there was still snow, and actually all the rain from the previous day had frozen over. So there was actually ice everywhere too. This is a subtle foreshadowing moment for something I'm literally about to talk about in like the next minute or two, but subtle foreshadowing. Charlie had already left for work. Bella quickly ate her breakfast, excited to get to school and see Edward. She's done a 180 with Edward. She literally has done a 180 and she is excited to see him today. Luckily, Bella actually had no problem with the black eye. She made it to school safe and sound. And she was standing at the back corner of her truck. And all of a sudden she hears this loud screech. And people honestly screaming or gasping like, and Bella's like, what is going on? And let me tell you, girly in a flight or fight scenario is a freezer. She is frozen, seeing this car very quickly. She really doesn't have any time to move, if we're being completely honest. The car is slipping and sliding on the black ice. The driver has lost control of the vehicle. It is coming straight for Bella. Bella looks up and she sees Edward like 4 cars away. He is in horror. Like there is shock on his face. From 4 cars away, that is how far he is. And Bella is just like bracing for impact. Like she knows this is about to collide. So she closes her eyes and she's like, oh no. And something hit her very, very hard, but it was not from where the vehicle was. Like it was not where she was expecting to get hit. Her head banged on the pavement and she was pinned to the ground by something. And she heard a low oath. That was her words, by the way. Like that's not me including the word oath. That is what she heard. And she immediately knows that what is pinning her to the ground, or who is pinning her to the ground, is Edward. And she heard him ask Bella, are you okay? You hit your head pretty hard. And Bella's like, huh? What? How are you here? You were just over there. And the gaslighting has begun, folks, because Edward goes, no, I was standing right next to you. We were literally mid-conversation. I was standing right next to you. She's fighting Edward on this. Like literally like, no, you weren't. Don't try and trick me. I know that you were not here. And he literally gives in a bit and he goes, just trust me. Trust me. And Bella says, I will if you promise to tell me everything. He kind of snaps and he's like, fine. And then about 6 or 7 EMTs show up. They bring out the stretchers. She has kind of like a cone of shame around her neck, as in a neck brace essentially. And they keep trying to give a stretcher to Edward and Edward's like, I'm fine. I promise I'm fine. This girl's probably concussed, but I'm fine. And so Bella's like, this is the most embarrassing thing to ever happen to me. I'm in a neck brace. I'm being placed on a stretcher in front of not just Edward Cullen, but the whole school. And then before they can even get her in the ambulance, Charlie pulls up in his patrol car and is like, Bella, 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 are you okay? And she's like, please end this now. What is going on? Why me? Why? So Bella is trying to disassociate at this moment in time. She really, really is. And when she's doing this, she notices the car's bumper and that it has the exact outline of Edward's shoulders. It looks like he took the hit, but is fine. She also sees that the Cullen family is angrily staring at her and that they have no concern over their brother, who was just also in this accident. Sus. Sus, sus, sus. Let's all go to the hospital. Edward is walking around like he owns the place. He's strutting down the hallways doing his thing. And Bella is stuck over here in a bed, in a room with another bed that is directly next to Tyler, and he is the driver of the vehicle. And she's like, this is not fair that I am stuck here in this stupid bed with this stupid neck brace, and Edward is just walking all over the place. This is not fair. Like, she's very angry. And Tyler is talking up a storm. He is apologizing. He's like, how did you get away from my car so fast? I just knew that I was going to hit you. And she went, oh, Edward Cullen actually pulled me out of the way. He was standing right next to me. He was right there. Cullen? I didn't even see him. Is he okay? Yeah, I think he's fine. They didn't even put him on a stretcher. She was literally stuck with Tyler all day and is so annoyed by him because he just keeps rattling off questions. Back to back to back to back. And she's like, please give me some peace, please. She closes her eyes. She's not even really sleeping. She literally is just closing her eyes so that he gets the hint like, shut up, please leave me alone. And then she hears him. Oh my goodness, who on earth could have this voice that the book described as musical? Who would be coming to the room asking if she was sleeping or not with this musical voice? Of course, our boy Edward, of course. And not only is it our boy Edward, he's smirking at Bella. Smirking. And Tyler is still talking. And Edward literally goes, not even looking at him, going, no blood, no foul, I'm completely fine, don't worry about it. And then he takes a seat on the edge of Tyler's bed so that he can be facing Bella. Bella tells him that she has no concussion and she's like, why aren't you stuck down here with us? And he's like, don't worry about it, you can get away with a lot of stuff when your dad is the head surgeon here and I've actually come to jailbreak you. And as soon as he says this gorgeous blonde doctor has entered the chat. He has entered the room. Bella also says that he has the same dark circles as the rest of the Cullen clan, which is so weird since the only two that are related are Rosalie and Jasper. Dr. Cullen examines her and he says, yeah, luckily you look great. I don't think that there's actually anything wrong. You are free to go home. Bella responds with, oh, I have to go home. Can I not go back to school? He gets to go back to school. He, as in Edward, and Edward says, well, someone has to tell everybody that we survived. And Dr. Cullen says, I think they're all going to get the memo since over half of your class is in the waiting room. And now Bella once again is like, oh my gosh, why do all these people care so much? I don't want to have to talk to all of them right now. And Dr. Cullen says, Bella, you are extremely lucky that nothing has happened to you. Like, this is great. And Bella goes, yeah, I'm extremely lucky that Edward was right there with me and that he saved me. And he says, oh, well, yeah. He's very short with his response. And then he immediately moves to check on Tyler. He's gonna have to stay overnight for observations. So while Dr. Cullen is looking at Tyler, his back is obviously turned to Bella and Edward. So when he is no longer facing them, Bella looks at Edward and goes, can we talk for a minute? The book says that Edward clenches his teeth, clenches his jaw, and says, your father's waiting for you. To which Bella says, I would like to speak with you alone, please. He doesn't say anything. He kind of just starts walking away, which she can follow him now because she's been discharged. And like, when I say walking, I mean, he's really not walking. He's basically running to where she's like actually having to like kind of jog to catch up to him, which isn't good because she was just in an accident, but oh well, I guess. And she tells him, you owe me an explanation, remember? I just saved your life. I don't owe you anything. You promised me. You don't know what you're talking about. You have a head injury. I want to know why I'm lying for you. And Edward goes, what do you think happened? And he snaps. The book literally says Edward snaps. Not like that, but like in his voice. She says, I don't know what happened, but you weren't next to me at all. And his car literally has your handprints dented into it as if you were lifting up the van. You really think I lifted a van off of you? And let me just tell you right now, his voice is real sus in this moment. Almost as if he had rehearsed that line multiple times. He goes on saying, nobody will believe you if you tell them about this. And we are back to the gaslighting. He says, can't you just say thank you and move on? Thank you. He groans and says, you're not gonna let this go, are you? I hope you enjoy disappointment. They are literally scowling at each other right now. It is a very heated moment in this hospital hallway. And she goes, why did you even bother? He pauses and then he whispers, I don't know, before walking away. Bella's like, what even just happened? But she makes her way to the waiting room. There's Charlie. She goes to Charlie first and she's like, I'm cleared. Let's get the heck out of here. Her classmates are all there staring at her like, can we come over? Like, what's happening? What's happening? What's happening? She's like, hoping that they get the memo that she does not want to talk to anybody right now. While they're in the car, Charlie says, Bella, you're gonna need to call your mom because I told her what happened. She had a right to know. And Bella's like, why would you tell her this? And Charlie responds, well, she is your mom. She deserved to know. And ooh, when Bella was on the phone, Renee was in hysterics. Rightfully so, by the way, because Bella literally could have died had a paranormal boy not been paranormal and saved her. And Renee is like, you need to come home. I'm going to also come home. We're going to go back to Arizona together. Like, you're done in Forks. We're done in Forks. I'm so sorry. But it was very easy for Bella to say no. She was now obsessed with the mystery and allure of the gaslighter. She was obsessed with it and she was like, I am not leaving now. It just got interesting. And when she went to bed that night, she dreamed of Edward Cullen for the first time. So let's see what Bella dreamed about, shall we? In Bella's dream, it was very dark outside with this bright light shining off of Edward's skin. And she couldn't see Edward's face because he was walking away from her, leaving her in the darkness, and she couldn't keep up with him. And every night after this dream, there he was again, always there, but always just out of reach. At school, Bella is literally now the center of attention. Like, if you thought she was as the new girl, she's now the new girl who almost got ran over in the parking lot. Like, she is now the it girl. And Tyler is following her around like a lost puppy. He has joined their little friend group. He keeps apologizing to her, but he also will not let her out of his sight. Like, it is almost getting annoying to Bella. And not only was it annoying to Bella, but it was also annoying to Mike and Eric, because you can tell Mike and Eric have a little thing going on for Bella as well. In biology class, Edward was trying to ignore Bella's presence, and Bella literally could tell that he was doing this. And the reason she knows this is because every so often she will look over and she will see Edward make fists with his hands. So they'll be calm and then he'll just do that. And so she's like, oh, he knows I'm here. I know he knows that I'm here. But Bella believes the reason he's ignoring her and acting this way towards her is because he regrets what he did. He wishes he never would have stopped the van from hitting her. He almost wishes she would have just been smushed by the van. That is what's going on in Bella's mind. She's like, oh, he regrets me. He regrets doing this, when that's an insane thought. But that's what's going through her mind. Little 17-year-old Bella really go home and email her mom being like, I'm doing fine, I'm wonderful, yada, yada, yada. But on the inside, she was like, I'm suffering because he won't even acknowledge me. And Bella's mom could tell that Bella was not okay for some reason. And Bella was like, yeah, I just think I'm really bumming out because of the weather. That's the only reason. We all know it's not the only reason, but that's the only reason Renee is gonna get. While Bella was so sad over him ignoring her, do you know who was ecstatic over this? Mike. He was so happy that her and Cullen are no longer talking. So happy. To the point that he would literally sit on the edge of her biology desk, her desk in biology class, which I think is more like a table, because Edward also sits there. He would sit on the edge until the bell would ring. With Edward sitting there, actively ignoring them, put that in quotation marks, he would just shoot a shot, I guess. And he was telling Bella while he was doing this, like, since the snow's washed away, I think our beach trip will be possible soon. We will see the beach trip soon. No one fret, but that's all we're gonna talk about for right now. Jessica has told Bella all about the Ladies' Choice Spring Dance coming up. And Jessica's like, are you gonna ask anyone? And Bella's like, probably not. No, dancing, not for me. And Jessica's like, well, I think I'm gonna ask Mike. Do you think Mike would say yes? I think I'm gonna ask Mike. And Bella's like really encouraging this, like, yes, please ask Mike. In her mind, she's like, get him away from me. But yes, you ask him. Yes, yes, yes. But the next day, when Bella sees Jessica, Jessica is not her bubbly, lively self. She's sad and she's sulking. And Bella's like, oh no. Does this mean Mike said no? Why is she acting this way? And we figure out it's not that Mike said no. He basically said, can I think about it? Which feels a bit like a no. So poor Jessica. Right before biology, Mike is doing his normal thing, sitting on the edge of their table, and he brings up the Ladies' Choice Dance. Mike says, so Jessica asked me to the Ladies' Choice Dance. And Bella's like, amazing, y'all will have the best time. I hope you said yes. And he goes, oh, well, I told her I had to think about it. I kind of thought maybe you were gonna ask me. And Bella's like, oh no, you're totally fine to go with Jessica. I actually am not even gonna be in town that weekend. I'm going to Seattle. Can't change it. And Mike keeps pushing a little bit. He's like, you can't just go to Seattle on another weekend? Yeah, no, I actually can't. Sorry. You should go with Jessica. Don't make Jessica wait. That's rude. Have fun. Mike very sadly walks back to his desk. You can tell he's feeling a little rejected because he just got rejected. The bell rings. The teacher is doing his thing. Bella is still upset because Edward is ignoring her. She is irritated at Mike for the whole Jessica situation. And she's just like over it. She's done. She is zoning out. Edward answered a question that the teacher asked him specifically. And she's like, thank goodness he didn't call on me because I wasn't listening. And then class has ended. And she beats Edward out of the classroom. And he actually calls after her. And she goes, oh, I'm so sorry. Are you speaking to me again? You can tell that he's trying really hard not to smile. And he's like, nope. Not really. He pauses and he goes, sorry, I'm being rude, but it's just better if we're not friends. And Bella goes, well, it's too late. You just now figured it out because you could have saved yourself all this regret. You think I regret saving your life? And Bella's looking at him like, yeah, well, duh. The way you're treating me makes me think that. And he's definitely mad at this point. He goes, you don't know anything at all. And Bella turns to leave. She's like, I'm not dealing with this, but she's a klutz. She's a clumsy, clumsy girl, and so she drops all her books everywhere. And so she starts to bend down to go pick up her books, but before she can even really process the action, he is already down there with her books neatly stacked up. He hands them to her, and that is literally the end of that interaction. Commentary note, this is probably the closest to the scene in the movie where they're on the field trip, and he's like, I had an adrenaline rush. You can Google it. It's pretty similar to that scene, except that field trip didn't happen where they're making their compost tea. That doesn't happen in this book. So similar, but they added that and changed things around. I don't know why, but they did. But you know what? The Google it line is the champion for me, and I really, really love that. So I won't be mad. I won't. Oh, actually, another note. This is another difference. So the reason she says no to Mike in the movie is because she says she's going to Jacksonville to visit her mom and non-refundable tickets. That is a much better excuse than the one she came up with in the book. Yes, yes, yes. Also, I believe that there's only one dance in the movie, and I think it's prom. I think. You can correct me on that if I'm wrong. In the books, this is a Ladies' Choice spring dance, and they still have prom in May. So there's 2 dances coming up. But in the movies, I think it's just prom. After all of this, Bella goes to her truck. Her truck literally works fine. You would have no clue that that whole incident happened. So that's a plus. Eric comes up to Bella and he's like, hey, I was wondering if you wanted to go to the dance with me. And Bella's like, oh, I thought it was Ladies' Choice. But no thank you, I'm actually gonna be out of town that weekend. Eric sadly starts to walk away, and Bella hears this low laugh. And obviously it is from Edward, who is literally watching this interaction and laughing at her rejecting yet another boy in front of him, essentially. So, as I said, she is now in her truck. I think before I said she was already in her truck. No. She was walking to the parking lot and Eric was there. So that is how she got to her truck, was him asking her. She's now in the truck. She's trying to leave the school, but she gets stuck behind the shiny silver Volvo with Edward driving it. He stops his car because I don't really know why he decided to just wait for all his siblings, like the school pickup zone, because that's not what it was, but he literally is stopping traffic. And of course, I know why, but Bella does not, and we will learn later. But he's literally stopping traffic. There's a big line. Bella is stuck behind him. She can literally see him through his rearview mirror. And do you know who is behind her in his car? Tyler. And since they're stopped and they have nowhere to go, Tyler decides to get out of his vehicle, go up to the driver's side window, and Bella's like, oh, I'm so sorry. Edward's really blocking traffic right now. As soon as he leaves, I can leave, and then we can all go home. Tyler goes, actually, no, that's not what I want to talk about, and this is perfect because we're trapped here, so great timing. And Bella's like, you have got to be kidding me. She doesn't say that, but she's thinking it. She is. And obviously, he asks her to the dance, and obviously, she says no. I'm going out of town. I already told Mike and Eric this. To which he responds with, yeah, but I thought you were just letting them down gently. Like, I didn't think you were actually going out of town. No, I'm actually going out of town. And Tyler responds with, okay, that's cool. We still have prom. Bella is very irritated. She turns her head back to what is in front of her. She sees the rest of the Cullens get into Edward's car. She sees Edward's face in the rearview mirror one more time, and she sees that he is laughing as if he had heard that entire conversation from his vehicle. Bella gets home, she starts making dinner, and she gets a phone call from Jessica on her landline. And Jessica's like, oh my gosh, you'll never believe it. Mike actually said yes. He doesn't need to think about it anymore. He said yes, we are going to the dance together. And Bella, being the mastermind that she is, went, oh my gosh, that is so amazing. You know what? You should see if Angela wants to ask Eric, because then y'all can go in a group together. And I've heard Tyler actually hasn't been asked yet. So maybe we should get Lauren to ask Tyler. During dinner, Bella tells Charlie, oh yeah, I'm going to be going to Seattle soon during this weekend. Like, she gives a date. And Charlie goes, isn't that the weekend of the dance? Are you going to be back in time for the dance? Do you not want to ask anyone? And Bella's like, no, I don't dance. I'm a klutz. You should know this. I get this from you. So there's a little lore. We learned that Charlie is also a klutzy man. And honestly, that's the end of that little dinner. So let's go to the next day. Back in the parking lot of school, of course. Edward has appeared almost out of thin air, and he's leaning on her truck. Bella kind of jumps back a little bit, being like, how did you get here? And Mr. Gaslighter himself goes, Bella, it is not my fault that you were incredibly unobservant. She is very annoyed and she goes, oh, why did you cause a traffic jam last night? Edward laughs, saying that was for Tyler's sake, not mine. I just needed to give that boy a chance. Oh, so you are trying to irritate me to death. Lovely, lovely. Why don't you just leave me alone? And Edward says, I actually wanted to ask you something. A week from Saturday, you know, the day of the school dance. And Bella's like, are you kidding me? Are you trying to be funny right now? And Edward says, let me finish. I heard you were going to Seattle and I was wondering if you wanted to ride. I feel like your truck does not get the best gas mileage and I can get there in one tank. Bella shakes her head because she's getting whiplash, saying, I thought you didn't want to be my friend. I said it would be better if we weren't friends, not that I didn't want to be friends. Edward says, it would be smart for you to not be my friend, but I am tired of trying to stay away from you. So, will you let me take you to Seattle? Bella's shell-shocked right now. She can't find any words, so she just nods her head like, mm-hmm. He smiles, and then he turns serious again, just like a little switch, saying, you really need to stay away from me. See you in class. And then he walks away. Okay, the next chapter is called Blood Type. Where was this in the movie? Where? This is a fantastic chapter. I love this scene, and it is nowhere to be found. We get the field trip scene. Instead of this is superior. So let's talk about it. This is also taking place on the same day, by the way. So it's just now lunchtime. Bella has been in a haze since this morning when she had her conversation with Edward. She honestly is a little sad when she gets to the cafeteria and she sees that he's not in the corner with the rest of the Cullen clan. Until Jessica goes, Bella, Edward Cullen is staring at you. Also, why is he sitting alone today? Bella's head snaps immediately to look at him. And as soon as Edward and Bella make eye contact, he raises his index finger like this and goes to beckon her over to him. And he winks. So he's just like doing this and winking at Bella, being like, come on over here. I kind of think I would pass out if that happened to me. And Jessica, poor Jessica, is watching this interaction and her jaw is on the floor being like, does he mean you? Bella's like, I guess so. Gotta see what he needs. He probably just needs help with some homework. Makes her way over to him and he's like, I thought we'd have lunch together. And she sits down and he's smiling so much. Kind of like me right now. He's just smiling up a storm. He's a happy little paranormal gaslighting man. He's happy. The scene is not in the movies. And could you literally imagine, whenever Twilight the movie came out, you were in the theaters and you just see Robert Pattinson as Edward Cullen be like, I would pass away. It would have been too powerful. It would have been too powerful for this world. And I love this line. This line is in the movie, so I'm gonna quote it. Let me look at my notes. As he's smiling so much to her right now, he says, I decided as long as I was going to hell, I might as well do it thoroughly. Anywho, Bella is really confused by his statement and she's like, what do you mean? He ignores this. Obviously, he never answers anything for her at this point in time. And he says, I think your friend is mad at me for stealing you away. I might not give you back. And she literally gulps. She gulps at this line. After her gulp, she goes, I'm not worried. I'm just surprised. Like, why now? He says, I told you, I got tired of trying to stay away from you. So I give up. I give up being good. I'm gonna do what I want. Let the chips fall. He pauses and then he goes, I always say too much when I'm around you. And she's like, I always think you don't say enough and I don't understand what you do say. But does this mean we're friends? Friends, he says. Or not? She mutters. He says, we can try to be friends, but I'm not going to be a very good one. And I'm just waiting for you to believe that. And he can see that she's thinking of something, and so he asks her, what are you thinking about right now? Please make a mental note of that question. We're going to address it shortly, but make a mental note for now. She says, I'm just trying to figure you out. To which he responds, are you having any luck? And in the back of her mind, she's like, Bruce Wayne, Peter Parker. And so she's like, I can't tell him this. I can't tell him this one bit. That's way too embarrassing. He responds with, that's so frustrating. Just so you're aware. Just so you're aware, that is so frustrating. And she says, oh, I can't imagine that at all. Someone refusing to tell you what they're thinking? Crazy. That must be so frustrating. Yeah, crazy, crazy. And he's kind of laughing, saying, you've got a little bit of a temper, don't you? No, I just don't like these double standards. Again, changing the subject. It's what he does best. And Edward says, your boyfriend over there thinks I'm being mean to you. He's worried about it. He actually is debating whether or not he wants to come over here. Bella says, I don't know what you're talking about, but clearly you're wrong. He explains to her, I'm not wrong. I'm actually really good at reading people. Except me? Edward nods and goes, except you. I wonder why that is. Bella says, can you do me a favor and just warn me the next time you decide to ignore me so that I'm prepared? Edward nods, saying, that sounds fair, but you owe me a theory. Bella shrugs, going, bitten by radioactive spiders? Oh, that's not creative at all. And just so you know, kryptonite doesn't bother me either. But I wish you would stop trying to figure it out, because what if I'm not the hero? What if I'm the bad guy? She says, you're dangerous. You're not bad. And once she says that, she notices that everyone in the cafeteria is left. And she's like, oh my gosh, we gotta go to class. He tells her, you go on ahead. I'm actually not gonna go. I'm gonna skip today. It's good for the soul. It's healthy for you to skip. And she's like, okay, well, I'm not gonna skip with you. I'm gonna have to go to class, so see you around. And in bio today, we are figuring out people's blood types. And can y'all guess who is extremely squeamish? Like, extremely so. Guesses? Got any? Bella. Literally 2 seconds into class, she sees someone prick their finger and she's down. She has turned green. She's down for the count. And the teacher's like, oh no, can someone please bring Bella to the nurse's office? And Mike's like, me. I will go. I will not leave her side. Bella, let's go. And so he's like, kind of like half carrying her. I don't know why I look like Quasimodo while I'm doing that. He's like kind of half carrying her. And she's like, get the finger away from me, because he has already pricked himself to test his blood type. And she literally looks up. She's like, you know what? Can we just stop for a second? She sits on the ground. She puts her face to the cold pavement. That is how bad she is feeling right now. And we hear a man from the distance go, Bella? And Bella isn't looking. Her face is to the pavement. And she's like, you have got to be kidding me. Why now? Why now? And obviously, it's Edward. He makes his way over to Mike. Mike's like, she's fine. She just fainted. It's okay. And Bella, still in the same place we last left her, she is just like, go away. Please, go away. And Edward is laughing at her. Mike says, I'm supposed to be bringing her to the nurse. I'm not supposed to leave her side. And Edward says, I've got this from here. You can go back to class. And Mike is arguing, saying, no, I'm supposed to be the one to take her to the nurse. But Edward has already scooped Bella up and is like halfway down the hallway by now. Mike is kind of hollering after, but like, he's already lifted her. There's no stopping this man. There's no stopping him. And before they get to the nurse's office, Edward's talking to her and he's like, okay, so you faint at the sight of blood, but not even your own blood, just others? And she's like, The nurse tells Edward, oh my gosh, there's always one of them here. Set her down here. You'll feel better soon. It'll pass. And the nurse looks at Edward. She's like, thank you so much for bringing her. You can go back to class. No big deal. And Edward goes, I'm actually supposed to stay with her the whole time. Once the nurse like kind of goes to do her own thing, Bella looks at Edward and she's like, you're right. Ditching is healthy. And Edward goes, you scared me there for a moment. I thought Mike was dragging your dead body into the woods. And oh, he absolutely hates me. Edward says that he absolutely hates me part with a big ol' smile on his face. And Bella goes, you can't know that. To which Edward goes, oh, yes, I can. I saw his face. I could tell. And Bella's like, how did you even see me? I thought you were ditching and going home. Edward explains that he was in his car. He was listening to his CD waiting for his siblings because he was their ride. They took his car. And before he can like continue explaining this to her, Mike walks in with another student from the biology class. And the nurse is like, oh my. Edward looks at Bella and he's like, leave the room now. And to his surprise, she listens and he's like, wow, I actually didn't think you were gonna listen to me. And she's like, I could smell the blood. Meaning the person that Mike brought in, like when they passed out, they had injured themselves and they were bloody. And Edward's like, that's impossible. People can't smell blood. And Bella's like, I can. I hate it. It smells like metal. Ew. And Edward is just so fascinated by her. Mike joins them in the hallway. He's glaring at Edward. And also he's ignoring Edward. He's like, you look better. To Bella, of course. Are you coming back to class? And Bella's like, no way. Ain't no way I'm doing that again. No. And then Mike actually brings up the beach trip that I was talking about earlier. He brings that up again and she's like, yeah, I'm planning on going. They're leaving Brian early. He's like, meet at my dad's hardware store. And she's like, cool. I'll do that. And then he's like, okay, well, I better get back to class. I'll see you in gym. And when he leaves, she just goes, ugh, I have to go to gym. No. And Edward tells her, I'll handle it. Don't worry. I got this. He goes up to the secretary. He sweet talks the secretary. He tells the secretary everything. He was like, she passed out in class. She's not feeling well. I really think she needs to go home, but she's not gonna be able to drive herself. So I also am going to need an excuse to go home. And the nurse is like, oh, yes, you are so sweet and kind to do this. Of course, I'll write a note. And that was that. And on their way out of the school, Bella asks him if he's going to the beach, when we all know Edward was definitely not invited. And he asks about it. He's like, I don't know, it depends what beach. And Bella's like, La Push? I think it's called La Push. And whenever she says that, something in his demeanor kind of changes a little bit. He's like, oh yeah, I don't think I'm gonna be able to go. Saying it's probably best for Mike if I don't go. Once they make it to the parking lot, his car is over here, her car is over here. And so she's making her way to the truck, and Edward's like, what are you doing? That wasn't a lie that I just told the secretary. I'm bringing you home. And she's like, how am I gonna get my car back? Excuse me? And he explains to her that his sister, Alice, will safely drop her truck back at her house. She's arguing with him, and she's eyeing her truck in the distance thinking, if I get a head start, I might be able to outrun him. And he's like, don't even try. I will literally drag you back. In the car, his music starts to play, and the CD that he's listening to is Claire de Lune, and she guesses this, and he's like, how on earth did you know that? And she explained like, oh, my mom plays the piano. This is actually one of my favorite pieces that she plays. And this is a piece of dialogue from the movie, but again, it doesn't take place in the scene because the scene doesn't exist. This, I believe, takes place the first time she goes to the Cullen house. They're making small talk, and it's actually pretty good small talk for the two of them. And Edward asks her a question, but he seems really almost agitated to ask her this question. He goes, how old are you? She responds with, I'm 17. He says, you don't seem 17. Commentator note, this little piece of dialogue actually cracks me up because it pretty much parallels a future scene we're going to be getting soon where this is directed towards him. Anyway, Bella explains to him what I told y'all earlier, that she's always been told she was like a 35-year-old woman. So they laugh about this and they continue on with their little small talk. And during the small talk, Bella actually asks Edward about his family. And he explains that his parents passed a really long time ago and he really doesn't remember anything. She tries to ask about his siblings and he looks at the time and he goes, you know what? My siblings would not be very happy if I left them standing out in the rain for too long, so I better go pick them up. And he tells her that he will see her on Monday because him and his brother Emmett are actually not going to be going to school for the next, I think it's like one day and then the rest of the weekend. They're going to be going hiking. He's like, please try to be safe during that time because you seem accident prone. And as he drives away from dropping her off at her house, he is smiling the whole time. It's later that night, Charlie's home, they're eating dinner. Edward told her that him and Emmett were going hiking at Goat Rocks. And so Bella very casually, very smoothly is like, hey, do people normally go camping here? Like, is that a great place to go? And Charlie's like, camping? No, people do not do that. No. It's great during hunting season because there's a lot of bears. So you must be mistaken. That must not be where people are actually going camping. It is now the weekend. It is now Saturday. She has woken up bright and early to meet all of her friends at Mike's dad's hardware store so that they can go to the beach. Mike, not so subtly, looks and goes, great, you're finally here. This is awesome. I think everyone is here and ready to go unless you invited someone. Obviously, he's trying to see if she extended an invitation to Edward. And he's ecstatic. And he's like, great, you should sit up front with me. And Bella's like, oh, no. And when they're figuring out their seating orders, Bella does take the front seat, but she basically shoves Jessica in the middle of the front seat. So instead of there being a console there, it's like a bench seat essentially. So that is where Jessica sits so that Bella's not forced to be up there. La Push is like 15 minutes away, I think, and it is a beautiful sunny day. And some of the boys from the reservation have shown up, including Jacob right down here. Now, I'm gonna say this right here, right now. I don't want to hear, why is Jacob's picture so small? Bella and Edward's are huge. Jacob is barely in this book. He will get a bigger picture when the wig is gone, when the long hair has been trimmed. He will be up here somewhere. We'll do some rearranging, but that's why he's itty bitty right now. Also, I'm not going to go too in depth on the reservation because it's not brought up a lot in this book. It's mostly brought up in book 2, so we will talk about that and then also talk about some of the things Stephenie Meyers should have done differently when talking about the reservation, but again, that's in the next video. We will go there, but that is why he's itty bitty tiny. Mike and Jessica literally have more scenes than Jacob. Anywho, this is Jacob's first appearance in the book, whereas in the movie, I think Jacob's in like the first 10 minutes or so because him and his dad, Billy, were dropping off the truck to Bella. Whereas in the book, the truck was already at Charlie's house. Oh, and one more thing about Jacob before I continue the LaPush story. This is on Stephenie Meyer. This is not on Jacob. He has the same name as Stephenie Meyer's brother. And I just find that very bizarre because we're all gonna be so for real right now. Like, let's be so for real with one another. Bella was basically a self-insert character for Stephenie Meyer. I said what I said. I said what I said. And so why would you name one of your characters who is potentially going to be in a love triangle with the main character self-insert after your brother? And we're going to continue on with the scene, but I'm very confused over that. Yeah, I am. We'll talk about that more in book 2 as well. Okay. So Bella doesn't even recognize Jacob, like, at all. She has no clue that she knows him. And Jacob goes, "Your dad bought your truck from my dad." And she's like, "Oh, cool, awesome. Yeah, I remember you." And he goes, "No, like, I'm a little younger than my sisters. Like, you probably remember my sisters, not me." And then the light bulb goes off in her head and she's like, "Oh my God, yeah, you're so right." They talk about cars and motorcycles for a little bit again, and I know I said I was done with the commentary note, but here's another one. I mentioned this earlier, that the reason cars are like really, really important in this saga is because of Stephanie's brothers. One of them being named Jacob. Isn't it so interesting that Jacob the character is interested in cars and motorcycles? See, it's based a little bit off of that. Anyway, we're not getting back on the soapbox, but another little commentary note to think about. I don't know why I'm making this so chaotic currently, but Lauren, we remember Lauren. She's not pictured, but Lauren, she's on this trip. And she sees Bella talking to Jacob, and Lauren is extremely jealous of Bella because Lauren was kind of the it girl. All the guys were chasing after Lauren, and then Bella showed up and kind of game over for Lauren, essentially. So when she sees them talking, she's like, "Did no one invite the Cullens?" Trying to stir the pot. And one of the boys that was with Jacob said, "No, the Cullens don't come around here." Bella wants to learn more about this, and she remembers how Edward was kind of like sweet talking the secretary, and she's like, I wonder if I can do that with Jacob. So she turns to Jacob and she bats her eyes and she's like, "Do you want to go on a walk? Let's go on a walk. Let's go on a little stroll down the beach." Jacob immediately says, "Yep, let's go. Perfect." We learn that Jacob is 15, so he is 2 years younger than Bella. And we also learn that the Cullens are not even allowed on the reservation. It's not that they're not welcome. They're like literally not allowed. He asks Bella a question that kind of sounds like it's out of the movie Scream. He asks, "Do you like scary stories?" And she's like, "What?" And he's like, "Let me tell you a little bit of a legend. Legend has it my family descends from wolves." Isn't that so crazy? And that is connected to the cold ones. It's my great-grandfather made a treaty with them to keep them off of our land because they are the natural enemies of the wolf. And this specific pack of cold ones that Jacob was referring to, they didn't hunt humans, which is why his great-grandfather made this truce with them. His great-grandfather essentially is like, "If you stay off of our land, we will not expose you." If you are asking yourself, right now, if the cold ones are different / not as dangerous as normal cold ones, why even make a truce? I have the answer for you. It's because there is always a risk associated with humans being around the cold ones. So it is better to be safe than sorry. There's always a risk. Mind you, he's not supposed to be telling this at all. And he's saying it because he truly believes that it's a legend. But he's not supposed to be sharing this. He literally says that the same cold ones that signed the truce with his great-grandfather are the Cullens that we see today. They're the same. They're not relatives. It's them. Haven't aged. It's them. And Bella's like, "What? What even are cold ones?" Vampires. Mic drop. And yes, as I said, he shouldn't be telling her this because he is exposing them, which would be breaking his side of the treaty. But it's okay because Bella batted her eyes. That's all she had to do. Oh, and here's the beginning of the triangle. Jacob goes, hey, so when I get my license... And Bella interrupts and goes, oh yeah, you should come see me. And Bella thinks to herself that she feels so guilty that she flirted with him this much to get his attention so that she could learn this story, because she thinks that he could be a really great friend for her. Yes, she says the word friend. She doesn't talk about his looks, doesn't talk about maybe a romantic interest. She just says, friend. That's it for now. We will go back into that in New Moon Eclipse and Breaking Dawn. Crazy. Later that night, she's back home. She's asleep. She's dreaming. And in her dream, Jacob is there. And he's telling her, run, 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 run. And when she looks back at him, it's no longer him. A wolf has taken his place. Mike was also there as a human, telling her the same thing, like, run. And then Edward steps out of the woods and his skin is glowing, telling her, trust me. The wolf lunged and so did Edward, and Bella screamed. She didn't scream because she was afraid of Edward. She didn't scream because she was afraid for the wolf. She screamed because she was afraid that Edward would get hurt. And she literally woke up screaming, and she could not go to bed after this, so she does some research. And 3 entries actually caught her attention. And I'm not going to pronounce them or even try because I'm going to butcher it. I know my strengths. I know my weaknesses, and I don't want to make a fool of myself. So I'll include them somewhere up in here, or even if I don't, I'll list them in the description. One of the two. But the first one, I'm gonna look on my notes for this because it's kind of a lot. The first one is powerful, undead, pale-skinned human. The second one, so strong could wipe a village out in a single hour after midnight. And then the last one, Italian vampire, on the side of goodness and a mortal enemy of evil vampires. And that one entry on the potential of good vampires existing was really all Bella needed to calm her nerves and just kind of settle her down a bit. Because if vampires exist, at least good ones are also out there. And she was like, that's it. I'm calm. It's the next day. Bella's like literally losing her mind. She's like, I gotta get out of here. So she goes to the woods. I will say she's not just wandering in the woods. She's not lost in the woods. She's on a trail. And Bella has come to the conclusion that if Edward is a vampire, she has 2 options. One is take good old Eddie's advice and steer clear of him. And then the next option is just don't do anything. He hasn't done anything to harm her. In fact, he has already saved her. So why would he harm her now? And she knows that the scary version of Edward in her dream is not actually him. It's a reflection of her own lack of knowledge and her fear that he would get hurt. Nothing else. Not that she would be injured in this, that Edward himself would be the one hurt. I don't know why I'm doing the hands like this, but it's happening. It's happening. And when she pieced that together, she had her answer. She can't stay away from him. If she's fearing for his existence and his life, she can't give him up. And that night, she didn't have a dream at all. She went to bed easy peasy, didn't even have to think about it. And she woke up to a nice, sunny, beautiful day. She goes up to the window. She decides to open it. And she's putting in a lot of effort to open it, and then it immediately like snaps open. But the reason she starts right off using all her strength, and she's like, well, this hasn't been open since I was itty bitty. Like, it's been years. There's no way this window is going to open without struggle. But to her surprise, it literally goes flying up as if it'd been used recently. Make a note of that, please. In fact, she says that it opens silently, no sticking, no struggle. In between classes, Bella is outside at school working on her homework, and there's Mike. Mike finds her, and he makes weird small talk. He's like, wow, your hair, it's red. Has your hair always been red? And she's like, yeah, in the sunlight it has hints of red in it. And he kind of like grabs her bangs and he's like, wow. And then he tucks it behind her ear. And she's like, personal space. At least she's thinking that. Anyway, after that, he keeps his hands to himself. He starts making small talk about their essay, and he didn't realize when it was due. And so he was like, oh no, that's such a bummer. I was actually gonna ask you out. And Bella looks like a deer in headlights. And he's like, well, you know what? Like, we're both gonna have to eat. We can do dinner. And Bella looks at him and goes, do not repeat this one bit, but Jessica really likes you and I don't want to hurt her feelings. And Mike's like, what? What do you mean she likes me? I didn't know she liked me. Are you sure she liked me? Like, you can see these thoughts going through his mind, and Bella's like, this is my time to leave. And so she's like, I'm done. Goodbye. And in Trig, which is her next class, Angela and Jessica tell Bella that they are going to Port Angeles to go dress shopping. And even though Bella's not going to the Ladies' Choice dance, she should still come along. It'll be fun. Honestly, a little bit to their surprise, Bella says yes. When Bella gets home, she's working on dinner and she decides to answer a few of her mom's emails. I will say, in the movie, her and her mom talk a lot more. I don't know if it's because they're using cell phones, but they really do communicate a bunch more and actually seem like they have a much stronger relationship, in my opinion. That's just my thoughts on that. She emails her very, very shortly. She's like, having a great time, went to beach, I have to write paper, gonna soak up the sun. Love, Bella. So Bella is outside. I think she finishes up her paper because she brings a book outside with her and she's like, I'm gonna read a classic. So she picks up Sense and Sensibility. She starts it. The guy's name is Edward. So she's like, oh no. No, I'm not doing this. Then I think she picks up Mansfield Park and the guy's name is Edmund and she's like, too close. Why is Edward such a popular name back then? I feel like no one's named Edward now. Are you kidding me? Wow. What an astute thought. Crazy, crazy, crazy. She actually falls asleep outside and it gets so late that she literally hears Charlie's car pull in. So he's now home and she looks up around the yard because she thinks he came outside because she feels like someone is watching her. And according to Stephanie Meyer's website, someone was watching her. Yes. Guys, I think we need to take a trip. I think we need to go to Port Angeles. So let's go. The girls are talking about how it's so weird how no one in Arizona ever asked Bella out because everyone here keeps doing it. Commentator note, commentator note, commentator note. I'm saying that Bella seems like a self-insert character for our author because she wrote on her website saying, yeah, I had a very similar experience to this. I lived, I think in Arizona, by the way, and never really attracted any men. No men were ever really flocking my way. But when I moved to Utah for college, I had dates left and right. So I felt like that was something similar that would happen to Bella, which is why I wrote it that way. That's from her website. That's why Bella is like center of attention. Guys are flocking to her. Yes. Back to the story. Bella tells them, yeah, and I've said no to every single one of the guys that have asked me out. And Angela goes, well, you didn't say no to Tyler. And Bella's like, yes, I did. I told Tyler no when he asked me outside of my truck. And Angela responds with, no, you told him no to the Ladies' Choice, but you're going to prom with him. Prom? I'm not going to prom with him. Angela looks at Jessica and goes, I told you he made it up. So apparently Tyler has been going around telling every single person at school, like, yeah, I'm going to prom with Bella Swan. I am. And this is the reason that Lauren, who is not pictured, hates Bella and is so jealous because Lauren likes Tyler. They finished dress shopping a lot earlier than they thought that they would, and they were all planning on getting Italian food for dinner, but it was a little early for dinner. So they were like, let's go to the boardwalk. Let's kill some time. It'll be great. Fun times. And Bella's like, oh, there's actually a bookstore that I want to go to. I'll just meet up with you guys later. I want to know it's not a, okay, cool, bye, have a good time. Jessica and Angela both are like, oh, we'll go with you. That sounds great. Like, we will happily go with you so you don't have to go by yourself. No big deal. And then we can do the boardwalk after. We can do both. And Bella's like, no. I don't mind going by myself. I'll go. No big deal. So she literally very happily had two people that were willing to go with her. And she was like, no, I'll go by myself. On her way to the bookstore, she finds it. She doesn't even walk in because it's not what she's after. She literally sees like dream catchers and crystals. And she's like, no. And instead of going back to where her friends are at, she goes, there must be another bookstore around here. And she just starts wandering a city she's not familiar with. It is getting later and darker, and she's like, no big deal, I'll find a bookstore. And then she ends up passing this group of men. She kind of like shrinks up a little bit to make herself smaller, to squeeze by. She's like, excuse me. They're catcalling her a little bit. And she's like, oh, okay, well, let's just try and make it back to civilization. Let's try and figure out where we're at. She loses them, and she's like, oh, beautiful, they actually weren't following me. That's great. A little while later, she sees two of them. There were four, there's now two following her, and she's like, oh no, they're back. So she kind of like puts a little pep in her step. She makes a mental note of where her pepper spray is in her bag in case she has to use it. And then she realizes like the way that they're getting closer and closer to her is almost hurting her in a specific direction. Not hurt, like H-U-R-T, herd, H-E-R-D, like a sheep, hurting her in a specific direction. The direction is like a dead end with no one there. So the other two guys pop back up and things could get bad real quickly, real quickly, until a car comes out of nowhere and Bella lunges for the car, literally thinking to herself, well, I'm either gonna get hit by this car or they're gonna help me, one of the two, but at least I'm getting away from this situation. The car obviously doesn't hit Bella. Instead, the person in the driver's seat, sounding almost like a Batman, is like, get in. Would you look at that? Good old Eddie boy is here in Port Angeles, saving the day. She's in the car and he tells her, put your seatbelt on. And he's driving like a madman. Like she's like holding on for dear life, like, oh my Lanta, why are you driving like this? What on earth? And she's like, are you okay? No. I told you, he sounds like Batman in this moment. Not looking at her, gripping the wheel, still very much angry and intense, is like, are you all right? And when she says yes, he's like, okay, can you just distract me then? Literally anything. I need you to distract me so I don't turn this car around. And Bella's like, well, I'm gonna hurt Tyler because he's telling everyone that I'm going to prom with him and I'm not going to prom with him. Bella's also like, Angela and Jessica, they're gonna be so worried for me. We're supposed to be going out to dinner. I'm supposed to meet them. Oh no. And as she's saying this, he literally pulls up to the Italian restaurant she was supposed to be at, and she's like, how did you know I was supposed to be here? Before Bella even gets her answer, Edward is out of the car. He sees Jessica and Angela and he goes, I'm so sorry that she's so late. I ran into her, we got to talking. Do you mind if I join y'all for dinner? And Angela's looking at him like, we actually already ate. To which Edward's like, well, I think Bella should really eat something, so do you guys mind if I bring her home tonight? And her friends are like, sure. And I would just like to note that they are really good friends, because instead of just saying, yeah, of course, like no big deal, they're taking their sweet time with their because they're looking behind Edward at Bella to make sure that she's okay with going to dinner with him and getting a ride home from him. So, good friends. They get a table for two and he asks for someplace a little private. The waitress really only has eyes for Edward and kind of is ignoring Bella, but Edward is just staring at Bella. He's not even looking or paying any attention to the waitress. I think they order 2 Coca-Colas and Bella ends up getting mushroom raviolis and he doesn't get anything. The mushroom ravioli is in the movie, by the way. Oh, and he also gives Bella his jacket because it's a little chilly in there. And he looks at Bella and he's like, how are you okay right now? A normal person would not be okay. They'd be in shock. She earnestly looks at him and says, I actually feel really safe with you. And then she talks about his eyes. She says that usually he's in a really good mood when his eyes are light and golden, but she knows he's gonna be grumpy if his eyes are dark. And then she's like, I have a theory about that. I'll only tell you in the car if... And Edward's like, there are conditions to this. Okay. And Bella's first question is, why are you here? To which Edward goes, next, pass. And Bella's like, okay, well, let's say one could read minds. How would that work? Edward looks at her and he goes, hypothetically, of course, and let's call this guy Joe. Okay, so hypothetically, if Joe had been paying attention to timing, he wouldn't have needed to be so exact. But only you could get in trouble in a town this size. I followed you here. I've never followed or cared about one specific person except for you. And I've never tried to keep one person alive before, and you make it rather difficult on me. And it's rather hard to keep track of you because I don't know what's going on in that mind of yours. So hypothetically, Joe had to keep tabs on Jessica. And it took Joe a hot second to realize that Bella had left Angela and Jessica. And so by the time Joe made it to the bookstore, she'd already decided that she wasn't staying there and went off on her own. So Joe had to go into the minds of multiple different people to try and figure out if maybe they had seen Bella, and Joe didn't learn which way she went until he read the minds of that group of men who were harassing her and probably would have done bad things. And at that point, he was so angry and mad that if Bella had not been there, Joe literally would have ended them, so to speak. Literally saying that if he would have left Bella with Jessica and Angela, he would have went back for those men. Edward also says he doesn't understand why he cannot read Bella's mind. He's never had any issues with anybody except for hers. They have left the restaurant. Bella finished her dinner. He obviously didn't eat or drink anything. It's now Bella's turn to say her theory, and she says that I came up with this theory when I was talking to Jacob Black when we went to La Push, and he told me a legend about vampires. Edward says, and they're in his car, by the way, he goes, so you immediately thought of me? To which Bella responds with, no, I actually didn't. He brought it up. He specifically mentioned your family being the exact one in the legend. But I've decided it doesn't matter to me what you are. She pauses, and then she goes, am I wrong? To which Edward says, it doesn't matter. So Bella goes, I'm right. Edward replying with, does it matter? Bella says, no, not really. How old are you? 17. How long have you been 17? A while. Yes, this is a piece of dialogue that is used in the movie, but it's told in the woods. I don't know why the movie franchise was very focused on these woods, and we'll talk about that in New Moon as well, because there's a really big scene in New Moon that involves the woods where it was not that dramatic in the book, but they really amped it up for the films. So this conversation that took place in the woods in the first movie, outside of the school, is taking place in the car on their way back from Port Angeles. So now that we know that Mr. Edward Cullen himself is a vampire, let's debunk some myths, shall we? There are no coffins, there are no sleep, there's no burning in the sun, and also there's no need to be invited in to people's houses. Side note, this is from the companion guide to this series. We learned that a lot of these myths actually come from the Volturi, which we will talk about in book 2. But the Volturi put these myths out so that people would kind of be confused about vampires and be thinking of them in this way instead of how they actually are. Since they do exist, it kind of fools the people. Edward explains how his family doesn't hunt humans. They call themselves vegetarians because they only go to animals. Whenever he was out of town with Emmett, they were hunting bears. That's why they went to that specific camp where Charlie was like, people don't go there. No. Because they were indeed going for bears, which is very ironic because human Emmett, and again, I will talk about this later, but human Emmett, the reason he died was because of a bear. It's a full circle moment. Edward also admits that he was worried about Bella the whole time and just kept talking Emmett's ear off about Bella. And Bella says, well, you could have called. And Edward's like, but I knew where you were. I knew you were safe. And Bella's like, well, I didn't know you were safe. He then argues with her a little bit saying, oh, okay, we really can't do this because we both can't be miserable about each other for forever. We both can't be sitting around here worried about the other one for the rest of your life. And then she starts to cry. She's crying. And he apologizes to her. He tells her that he will see her tomorrow at lunch. He will save her a seat. And before she gets out of the car, he makes her promise that she will never go into the woods by herself again. She went to bed that night positive about 3 things. First, Edward was a vampire. Second, there is a part of him that thirsted for her blood. And third, she was unconditionally and irrevocably in love with him. I feel like now is a really good moment to discuss timeline. Bella met Edward in January. He ignored her until March. The car incident took place in March. We are still in the month of March and she is in love with him. So the month where he's actually communicating with her is where she's unconditionally, irrevocably in love with him. Perspective. The next day, she is heading out of her house to go to her car, and Edward pops out of nowhere. Pops out of thin air saying, hey, do you want to ride together to school today? Also, here's a jacket in case you get cold. He explains that the rest of his family took Rosalie's car, which is a bright red convertible, mind you. So he drives her to school in his shiny silver Volvo. Literally the first person they see when they walk into school together is Jessica. And Edward looks at Bella and is like, what are you gonna tell her? And Bella's looking at him like, how did you know I was thinking that? You can't read my mind. And Edward responds with, I can't read your mind, Bella, but I can read hers, and she wants to know if we're secretly dating and how you feel about me. And honestly, Bella's kind of smooth in this moment because she flips it around. She's like, oh, what do you think I should say? And Edward says, I guess you could say yes to the first one, if that's okay with you, of course. And the second one, I'll be listening to hear your answer myself. Why wasn't that in the movie? That's such a good scene. Oh my goodness. And she ends up going to Jessica. She tells Jessica that she had a great time. No, they didn't kiss. Yes, she wants to hang out again. And that she really likes Edward, but she thinks that she likes Edward more than he likes her. And then she changes the subject to Mike so that Jessica will just yap away. At lunch, Edward makes a giant plate of food and is just shrugging at Bella, being like, we'll share, even though we all know he's not gonna eat any of it. He looks at Bella and he says, something you told Jessica really bothered me because you're wrong about you liking me more than I like you. He says something right here that I'm gonna need each and every one of y'all to make a mental note of for a future book. Put a pin in this thought. Let me get closer and also look in my notes so I can directly tell you. He says, I care most because I can do it. If leaving is the right thing to do, I'll hurt myself to keep you safe. Subtle foreshadowing moment. Everyone and their mother, by the way, is watching the two of them at lunch. Everyone. These people, they're all like, oh my, what is happening? And when they get to biology, it's a movie day. So they're kind of just sitting there. Bella is not paying attention whatsoever because her and Edward are dating. And she's just thinking about all these things like running through her head. She's very, very distracted. And all she wanted to do was just reach out and touch Edward. That's all she wanted to do, but they're not at that point yet. They're not. In gym class, Mike is low-key hounding Bella, being like, what's going on with you and Cullen? I don't really like Cullen. I don't like the way he looks at you. He looks at you like you're something to eat. And she sees Edward after class, because remember, he was her ride to school, so he's her ride home, and Edward is just glaring at Mike. And Edward tells her, wow, that boy, that kid is really getting on my nerves right now. He also tells Bella, it's my turn to ask you all the questions, and boy, does he go through every single basic question you could ever think of. He was literally asking her so many questions that it got to the point that Bella felt like she was taking a personality test or something. And from the beginning of that morning, because he took her to school that day, to literally evening time, they talked nonstop, just getting to know one another, asking each other's questions, and not even realizing how much time had passed. And when Edward's car leaves her driveway, another one pulls in. And that car was not Charlie's. It was actually Billy and Jacob. And Bella knew by the way that Billy was looking at Edward's car that Billy recognized Edward Cullen. As Billy and Jacob pulled in, Charlie was like literally right behind them, and he was so excited because Billy is actually his best friend. And as Billy gets out of the car, he looks at Charlie and he goes, yeah, Jacob was just so anxious and excited to see Bella again that we thought we'd pop in and come stay for the game. And Bella's thinking to herself, oh no, my flirting was too good. It was expert level and now he's attached. Little does she know that he's really attached. We will get to that later, obviously. Billy and Jacob leave, Charlie and Bella are making small talk, and Charlie is really wanting Bella to go to the dance. Like, he's not even being subtle about it anymore. He's like, are you sure you have to go to Seattle that weekend? Why don't you just go? Did no one ask you? I really thought like you and Mike would hit it off since you guys are so friendly. And Bella's like, you were just so wrong, Dad. Mike is actually going with Jessica. Jessica is the one who likes Mike. And Charlie's like, oh, okay, my bad. Like, he's trying to be involved in her life, but obviously he can't because of what Bella now knows with her relationship of sorts with Edward. Like, poor Charlie. This conversation could be easily solved with some answers, but he will never know any answers. But anywho, Charlie actually says, it's a good thing you're going to Seattle this weekend because I'm going fishing and I would hate for you to be home alone all day, but if you do change your mind, just know that I can cancel my fishing trip and hang out with you. I would love to do that. And Bella's like, no, it's okay. I get that from you. I like my alone time as well. Go fishing, go have a good time. It is the next day and Edward is back at it with his game of 20,000 questions. He also tells her that he is going to drop her truck off in the school parking lot because him and Alice are leaving early so that they can go hunting before he has to spend the whole weekend with Bella, just to kind of prepare him a little bit so that nothing goes awry. He also explains that Alice is actually the most supportive of Bella and Edward's relationship, and that the others cannot understand why Edward can't leave Bella alone. They don't get it. And honestly, they don't approve. I'm really just pointing at one person in particular, but they don't approve. And Bella's just kind of sitting there like, oh, like, is it me? I don't really understand. This is actually very dangerous for my family. Like, if this goes wrong, this could be really bad for everyone else. Oh, we also have our first family introduction between Alice and Bella at school. And Alice has a very, very friendly smile. Because Bella, that's so nice to finally meet her. This is a really small scene, and the only reason I included it in this little recap is because this introduction scene is completely different than the one in the movies, because the first time she meets Alice is at the Cullen house. Which that scene still exists, but that's not their first encounter. This is their first encounter. Bella literally had such a horrible day at school because Edward left right off the bat, so she spent the whole day without him. And oh my goodness, can't take a hint, Mike was just hounding her with questions about Edward Cullen. Literally hounding her with questions like, are you going to the dance with Cullen? You said you weren't going to be in town. Are you planning on going to this dance with Edward Cullen? This is actually where we learn that Bella is no longer planning on going to Seattle, and so she's telling people that. She's like, yeah, no, plans actually didn't work out, but I'm still not going to the dance. I need to do some homework, some laundry, some cleaning. We're just not going to end up going to Seattle. And Edward doesn't know that she's telling people this, slash she's not telling anyone that she's hanging out with Edward this weekend. So for all they know, she's just gonna be alone. Are we on the same page? I think we're on the same page. That was a little confusing, but I think we found our way. The school day finishes. Sure enough, her truck is right there in the parking lot. She opens the driver's seat and sitting there is a little handwritten note that says, please be safe, from our man, Edward. And then later that night, she finally tells Charlie, yeah, I'm no longer going to Seattle, but I am gonna be staying at home. Don't worry about me. Go fishing, go have a nice time. I'll just be having some much needed alone time. So again, I'm gonna preface, she has not told anyone that she is hanging out with Edward this weekend. Can y'all tell I'm starting to lose my mind? Because I can feel it. I can internally feel it. We're about to rally and bounce back. She wakes up the next morning bright and early. She's so excited to be hanging out with Edward. And she tells him when he gets there, I'm gonna drive because you drive like a madman, and so I can't take that. Just tell me where I need to go. So he ends up telling her that they're gonna go on a little hike. And by little hike, it's actually a pretty long hike. I think it's a couple of miles. And Bella's like, ugh, are we kidding me? Like, no, thank you. Do I seem like an athletic hiking person? No. But she does it anyway because she's so excited to be hanging out with Edward. And this is when she tells him, hey, I've told everyone we're not going to Seattle and that no one knows that she is with Edward because she doesn't want to get his family in trouble. Edward responds with, I wish you wouldn't have told me that because now I'm going to have trouble bringing you back home. I might not want to ever bring you back home. And after the 5-mile hike that they have to take, they come across this beautiful, peaceful, serene meadow. Now, y'all have seen the meadow in the movie, but let me just tell you, the meadow scene in the movie does not compare to the meadow scene in the book. It is so fast in the movie. I feel like if you blink, you miss it. It is very, very important in the book because this is actually the first scene that Stephenie Meyer wrote in this universe. Like, she had a little dream about Twilight and it was in the meadow. And so she started at the meadow scene and she just couldn't stop. So this is a very integral part to the story, which means it was definitely a choice to cut it down for the movies. In the meadow, the sun is shining, it is radiating. Bella is literally standing in the sun, soaking it in, and then she turns around and she sees that Edward is several feet behind her, still in the shadows, and he's taking like this big inhale, not even like to breathe, because obviously he doesn't have to, but because he's like, this is about to be a lot, but it's gonna be okay. And he kind of like unbuttons his shirt a little bit and he steps into the sun. And it's an experience because he literally starts to sparkle. He starts to shimmer and shine in the sun. And so as he's shining, like a diamond, some may say, he sits in the grass in the meadow and Bella is like, oh my gosh, he's beautiful. And when he sits down, she sits down with him, and this is the first time that she actually reaches out to touch him without either of them like, oh, as if they've been shocked. Like, they kind of just stay like that for a little bit. He asks her what she's afraid of, and she leans in really, really close, and when she does this, something like clicks in his mind where he's like, I gotta get away from you real quick. So he's now 20 feet away from her, and he tells her like, just give me a minute. I'm okay. You're okay. Just give me a minute. And then he says, if only I were human. And now we're having a little bit of an iconic moment. We are still in the meadow. For some reason in the movie, they're like, let's put them in the spooky, ooky middle of the woods. But no, we are in the peaceful meadow still. And he says, I am the world's best predator. Everything about me invites you in, as if I need that though, as if you could outrun me. During this part, he reaches up and he grabs a big old branch from a tree, rips it down, and he throws it so hard that it shatters against another tree trunk and it like actually like rattles a little bit. And Bella's like, holy cow, oh my. She literally doesn't move and she notes that this is the most frightened of him she's ever been. He then shakes it off because he can see this on her face and he's like, don't be afraid of me. Do not be afraid of me. I swear I won't hurt you. I can control myself. That just caught me off guard. Bella tells him that she was afraid that she would like to stay with him more than she should. And she also tells him that she doesn't want to leave. He tells her that he won't hurt her, but there is something about her that he compares to an alcoholic being locked in a room with a glass of brandy. He also says the iconic line that I don't think I can actually say on here, where it's like, you are like my own personal brand of an illicit substance. Y'all catch the drift. Edward explains to Bella that he literally talked to every single member of his family to see if anyone else has ever felt this way about a human. And Emmett said that he has felt that way twice in his life, but he had never been able to control himself. It wasn't a romantic thing. It was almost as if like someone's blood sang to them, and that he was so tempted that he had to act on it. Again, it was never romantic, and that's kind of the difference between the feeling that they may have felt to how Edward is feeling, because Edward now has that romantic attachment on top of the blood singing to him. Edward explains that after Bella's first day in biology, when it took all of his strength not to reach over and attack, he convinced himself that the only solution was for him to get up and go to Alaska. There is another family clan in Alaska that is quite similar to the Cullens, where they are also vegetarians, and so that is where he went. But he only went for 2 days. He had it all planned out, but he honestly couldn't stay away from her. And his family was very divided over this, because Carlisle and Esme wanted nothing more for Edward than for him to find his match, his mate, the one he could spend the rest of eternity with. These three right here, Rosalie, Emmett, and Jasper, were like, oh, this is not good. This is not good one bit for our family. This is putting us all at risk. Oh, no, no, no. Alice was also on the side of Carlisle and Esme because she said that Edward will be able to control himself. And also there's a little more to Alice being on the side of Carlisle and Esme, like there's more of a reason to it, but we haven't gotten to that part yet, so hold tight for that answer. But it got really bad after the car incident, because that's when Rosalie, Emma, and Jasper were like, boy, you gotta go. You literally have got to get out of here, because you got so lucky that Bella didn't say anything about your hand imprints, your shoulder imprints, about nobody seeing you. That was so risky. But on the flip side, had she have died and got hit by the car, there is no way on this earth that Edward would have been able to control himself if her blood had went all over the parking lot. So it also would have been dangerous in that regard. There was like no win-win in that solution. It was a lose-lose. He tells her the thought of you still white, cold, is unendurable, saying you are the most important thing to me now and for forever. And so the lion fell in love with the lamb. Bella looks at him saying, what a stupid lamb. Which Edward responds with, what a sick, masochistic lion. I'm going to give some perspective right here, right now. It's my job as a commentator to throw out the timeline. They met in January. He left, he returned, still in January. He didn't speak to her until March. We are now in the month of March, and the lion has fallen in love with the lamb. The lamb also is in love with the lion, whether she said it or not. She's in love with him. It's been less than a month, like genuinely, from the time he started to actually talk to her to now, because we are still in the month of March. Even though they met in January, they were not speaking. He looked crazy and didn't speak to her, and she believed that he thought that she stunk. So in the month of March is like their timeline. So it's like real quick, like hitting the ground running. Back to our story, he also tells Bella that she didn't do anything wrong when she leaned in close. He just wasn't expecting it. And it was more of a surprise than anything. And then he says, look, I'm fine. So obviously he is now leaned in closer to her by putting his hand on the side of her neck, and he places his other hand on her cheek. He then whispers to her, be very, very, very still. He puts his cheek against the base of her throat, and he starts to just move down very slowly to listen to her heartbeat. He grabs Bella's hand and he puts it on his cheek, and he's like, do you feel how warm that is? Which Bella's like, yeah, it actually is really warm, which is very odd because normally like when I accidentally touch you, you're ice cold. And she tells him not to move, and she does a very similar thing where like she traces parts of his face with her fingers. And she's thinking to herself, oh, he looks really hungry right now, but not in a way where she thinks he's gonna attack. It's in like a different way. And Edward can see this and he goes, there are different types of hunger. These are hungers that he doesn't even understand because he's not used to feeling so human. And while he's staring at her, he's like, is it always like this? And Bella's like, it has never been like this for me. And then in a very human-like manner, he puts his arm around her and he presses his face into her hair. And he whispers, I have human instincts. They are just deep, deep, deep inside. And they're just kind of laying like that for a little bit, and then he tells her that he wants to show her how he can travel throughout the forest. This, honestly, is like the biggest change in my mind from the books to the movie. Now, is it actually? No, but such an iconic line from the movie does not exist in the books. I feel like this is the line everyone makes fun of whenever they watch the movie, and it's not in the books. So in this moment, he looks at her and he goes, "Come on, little coward, climb on my back." In the movie, he says, "Hold on tight, spider monkey." That line is nowhere to be found, and I just think that that is a wild change. Wild change. And he gives her a piggyback ride, but like times it by 1,000. Literally, they are zooming, and she's a little motion sick, if you will. She didn't take any Dramamine, so she's feeling the effects. When she starts to actually get her color back, when they're on solid ground, when he's no longer running, he says that he was thinking of trying something, and then he takes her face in his hand and he kisses her very, very softly. And Bella's response was crazy. Her blood started to boil, and she gets into it a lot more than either of them expect her to be, to the point where he gently, emphasis on gently, pushes her back so that she'll stop, because they're kind of pushing their limits. And he's showing a lot of restraint right now, saying, "Okay, it's nice to know that I am stronger than I thought I was." And when they're back to the car, he says, "Give me the keys, I'm gonna drive. You are not in the right mind to drive." Another difference between the book and the movie, their first kiss scene, completely different. Completely different. And I think I prefer this one to the one we got in the movie. Time for a history lesson, time for some background on Edward. Edward was born in Chicago in 1901, and he was found in the hospital in 1918 when he was 17 years old, and he had the Spanish influenza. Both of his parents had already succumbed to this disease, and Carlisle found him, and Carlisle had been alone for several years. Honestly, he wanted a family. He wanted to not be alone anymore, and so when Edward was there on his deathbed, his family was already gone. No one really would have, I don't want to say missed him, but would have paid attention to the fact that he wasn't there. So Carlisle took it upon himself to turn Edward, and he was the first one in the Cullen clan that Carlisle turned. Now, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier in the video, I made Carlisle's picture bigger than Esme's because Carlisle is the head of this family, and he is who turned almost all of them. I figured he deserved a bigger picture because he has a bigger role within their family. That's why it looks like that. Not too much time has passed before Esme is the next one that enters the Cullen family. Esme had fallen from a cliff, and somehow her heart was still beating when Carlisle found her in the hospital, so he turned her. And they actually become mates. So they are still together. They are soulmates. They love each other. There's actually a lot more lore on this. If y'all want to hear more background on Esme, let me know, because according to the companion book, she had already met Carlisle before when she was much younger. When she was like looking for a husband or wanting a husband, she wanted someone almost like Carlisle, and she didn't find that at all. She actually found a horrible man that she married. There's a little bit more to the Cliff background, so if you want to hear that story, comment down below and I will share. Moral of what I just told you from the companion book: that was not the first time they met. Carlisle kind of is like, oh my gosh, it's fate. He changes her, she joins the family. And then I believe the next one that they end up getting is Rosalie. Rosalie's background I'm not going into until Eclipse, because you get the full heartbreaking story. And honestly, justice for Rosalie. Yes, she is sassy. Yes, she is not the nicest person in the world, but also she deserved better. She really did. Fun fact about Rosalie, because I want to make this really heavy moment lighter. She was originally supposed to be called Carol. In the first draft of this book, her name was Carol. As I said, she was after Esme, and Carlisle honestly had the intention of turning Rosalie in hopes that this would be Edward's mate, like how Esme was to him. So just like Esme and Edward, Rosalie didn't have any say or option in becoming a vampire, and she was not happy with this. They were not a match. They were not interested in that. He has only ever seen Rosalie as a sister, / she really doesn't like her attitude in any way, shape, or form. A few years later, Rosalie found Emmett, and Emmett was attacked by a bear. There was something about him that she couldn't leave there, and so she carried him while he was bleeding out over 100 miles to Carlisle, telling him, "You need to save him. I would do it myself, but I don't trust myself to be able to stop." In that moment, she showed a lot of self-control, because he was literally bleeding out in her arms as she was racing to get back to Carlisle. And they save Emmett. Emmett joins the family, and they are indeed soulmates. They are indeed a love match. And Edward actually explains every so often, Rosalie and Emmett have a wedding. They get remarried. They don't always stay with the Cullen clan. Sometimes they will go and get their own house and live as a married couple. And then Alice and Jasper are completely different from everyone else because Carlisle didn't turn either of them. Jasper's story we will learn more about in Eclipse. The author made some choices with Jasper's story that I don't understand why she chose that route for him, but I'm not the author. I think it is quite problematic, but again, we'll get into that when we get to Eclipse, no one fret. What is different about Alice and Jasper though is since they weren't turned by Carlisle, they somehow were able to form a conscience by themselves. They weren't together or anything like that. They were basically nomads. Jasper was kind of wandering on his own and he belonged to a different family / clan. Alice found him. She was basically looking for him and she found him. Alice is special just like Edward because Alice has a power. She has visions. That's why she's on Carlisle and Esme and Edward's side when it comes to Bella because she's seen a lot of what is going to happen / what has happened. Alice actually saw a vision of Jasper. That is why she knew to go after him to find him because Jasper himself was looking for Alice. He just didn't know it and Alice did. Foreshadowing moment. Alice can always see when another group of their kind is coming into this region or this area. And so that way they can kind of prepare, talk to them, be like, this is our territory. We don't hunt here. No, no, no. I know this is a lot of information that I'm throwing out, but we're gonna sidebar real quick. In the movie, these three people we have already seen because they're in Forks. They're hunting. Charlie believes it's animal attacks. His family friend Waylon has been attacked, has been hurt, injured. I think he dies in the movie. If you're just going off the books, who even is that man? What, that storyline isn't even there. I feel like they could have included more book scenes like my blood type scene instead of Waylon. But anywho, as in this moment in time, there doesn't seem to be any vampires in the area. A little more backstory on Alice, which we will get a lot on her later, but they don't talk about this in the movie. So if you just watched the movies, you would have no clue. Alice has always had these premonitions, these visions. They just got heightened when she turned into a vampire. And so when she was younger, she had this premonition of her mother was going to get into a buggy and the buggy was going to get into an accident. Her mother would not survive. Alice goes to try and warn her mother, but it's too late. In the vision comes true. She tells people like, oh, I tried to stop it. I knew this was gonna happen. And they think she's crazy. They think she's crazy. They send her to a mental institution where daily she is getting shock therapy done to her. And she doesn't remember any of this at all, to the point where she has no clue who turned her or even why the person that turned her stopped and didn't finish her off or stay or anything. They just kind of let her wake up and live her vampire life. And so this question has always rattled the Cullen clan, like, why? That makes no sense. It will all connect and make sense by the end of this video. But whoa. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Edward also explains that there aren't many of their kind floating around, and those that aren't vegetarians. And that they have found one other family like theirs in Alaska. That's where Edward went after that first day in biology. And they go back to Bella's house, and Edward admits that he would spy on her at night, watch her sleep. And he would also tell her that in her dreams, she would say his name out loud, and that's how he knew he couldn't walk away, that it wasn't a one-sided feeling. This is the wildest part to me, and it really rattles me to my core, because if you go on Stephenie Meyer's website, the author, and you go to the archives, she has all these like questions that she answered from fans. And a fan was like, well, you mentioned earlier that her window, it never got stuck, it wasn't squeaky, any of that when Bella tried to open it. Is that because Edward was coming into her room and watched her sleep? Yes, obviously that is why. But she includes that after the first night that he did this, he brought back some like oil to put on her windowsill so that it would no longer squeak. So that when Bella opened her window and it opened easy peasy, it's because he greased it up so that each night he'd come watch her sleep and wouldn't wake her up. And that's so funny to me and strange, because I'm just imagining this man outside of her window with his little oil trying to get in there to watch her sleep. Like, that is next level. It's dedication, and I just find that such a bizarre response that I needed to share with the class. But the first night that he went to watch her sleep was the day that Mike asked her to the dance and she told him no. That very day, Edward was wrestling with the fact that yes, he should be ignoring Bella. But one day Bella is going to say yes to Mike or someone else. And he couldn't take it. He really couldn't. He didn't want that. And so when he watched Bella sleep, in that first night she was dreaming, saying his name, he was like, oh, I am not letting her get with any other man. No, no, no. And that is why soon after this moment, he started talking to her in class. Before they can continue on with this conversation, he hears Charlie. And so Edward zooms away and Bella talks to Charlie for a little bit. Charlie's like, oh, like, what did you end up doing today? Yada, yada, yada. And Bella was like, yeah, just kind of stayed at home, didn't do much, went outside a little bit because it was just such a nice, beautiful, sunny day. Charlie once again brings up like, it's Saturday night, you don't have a date, anything like that. Like you should be having fun. And once again, he brings up Mike Newton and Bella's like, I don't want to do that. No, 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 no. And so she zooms into her room and guess who is hanging out in her room? Edward Cullen. And they're actually a bit more touchy-feely than they were earlier today. And Bella literally brings this up to him and he responds with, it's more mind over matter at this point. I've told myself and shown myself I can control it. I can control everything. So we're good. Mind over matter. And he says that I've decided I'm strong enough and there's no way I could possibly ever. Then he pauses, kind of switch gears with how he's saying his sentence, saying, I am certain that if something happens, I will be able to leave. He does also say that it's going to be harder tomorrow because currently he's a little desensitized to her smell. And so when he goes away and then comes back to her, it's kind of be like starting from the ground zero. Bella's like, don't leave. Just spend the night. You've been spending the night anyway. This time at least I know. And he is being such a smiley, smirking boy, grinning ear to ear and laughing, saying it's supposed to be the glory of first love. Once again, he is using the word love. And Bella starts asking more questions like, why do you and Alice have powers but nobody else does? And Edward responds with, we really don't know. The only theory that we have is some of their abilities that they have when they're human are just heightened when they're a vampire. And so they're assuming that when Edward was human, he was probably really good at reading people. That kind of translated into reading minds when he became a vampire. And then I already told y'all that Alice had little premonitions or dreams of certain things. And so when she was a vampire, it got heightened, they're more exact, they're more in-depth and thorough and legit. And Edward says that even though the rest of them don't have powers to say, he does believe that like they brought certain attributes from their human life into their vampire life and it's just stronger now. For example, Carlisle brought his compassion, Esme brought her love, Emmett his strength because he's incredibly strong. Rosalie, he says her pig-headedness, her stubbornness. And Jasper actually does have a bit of powers and Edward says it's because in his human life he was very charismatic and persuasive. We will get to that in book 3, but his powers now are almost like he can excite a very quiet and still room or vice versa. So he can feel people's emotions and to some extent change it. Again, to some extent. It's not like he can completely control them, but he can feel exactly how others are feeling. And this is a very subtle power to where most people don't even realize he's doing anything. Bella also brings up the conversation of marriage, and I would just like to note right here, right now, yes, this is still the day of their first date, their first kiss, saying I love you, and now marriage. This is all happening in one day. 0 to 100 real quick. And Edward tells her that marriage would probably never be possible or even going like steps further than just a first kiss because he could easily break her if he's not careful. And then he ends up humming her a lullaby to go to sleep that night. When Bella wakes up, Edward tells Bella that she actually told him that she loved him while she was asleep. And so Bella responds with, well, let me say it now that I'm awake. I do love you. And Edward replies with, you are my life now. Bella asks Edward, did Alice see me coming into your life? Edward replies in the weirdest way and says something like that. Very vague. So Bella knows he's leaving out details. But he immediately changes the subject and goes, I would like you to introduce me to Charlie as your boyfriend. I would like Charlie to be aware of what is going on. Obviously not the vampire stuff, but the relationship aspect. And he also says that while we're on the topic of introducing me to Charlie, I want to introduce you to my family. Let's do it today. I've already prepared them. Let's do it. So she tells Edward, okay, give me a human moment. And that essentially means like she's gonna go shower, brush her teeth, get dressed, get changed, take a breather. She ends up putting on a long khaki skirt and a blue top. So this is going to be her outfit to meet the family. And after her human moment, when she is all dressed, Edward kisses her for the second time and she passes out. Truly, not exaggerating, She's down for the count, she passes out. And she tells him like, don't worry, it's nothing you did, I just forgot to breathe. I was so excited I forgot to breathe. Oh, and that just cracks me up. The Cullen house is in the middle of the forest essentially, and so they do have to go off-road. I am gonna include a picture / illustration that was in the companion guide because this is how Stephanie Meyer envisioned it before any of the movies. So I'll put that somewhere. But that's like kind of what the grounds look like. And it's 3 stories tall. There are windows everywhere. It is bright, it is open. And honestly, I do think it is very similar to the house in the movies. First, they meet Carlisle and Esme, and Carlisle and Esme make sure to keep their distance because they don't want to overwhelm Bella. Obviously, Carlisle has already met her, but this is a lot. So they don't want to do anything to scare her off. And Bella compares Esme to a real life Snow White. Very elegant, very graceful, very beautiful. And next we meet Alice, who runs down the stairs and kisses Bella on the cheek and goes, wow, you do smell good. And Jasper just stood off to the side from a distance. Edward is staring him down and Jasper just says, hello. Rosalie and Emmett are nowhere to be seen. Apparently Emmett is like trying to convince her to go introduce herself to Bella and Rosalie's having no part in it. This is a little different from the movie because there's no, we made Italiano for you, or is she even Italian? Her name's Bella. That's not here. Rosalie breaking the glass bowl, that's not here. That's an additional thing. We also learn that Edward is very, very talented at the piano. And so Esme is like, Edward, you should play or something. And Edward's like, no, I'm okay. And Bella's like, really? Like, I would really like to hear something. And of course that does the trick. So he starts playing a song that he told her that he wrote for Esme, and then he's like, oh wait, you actually inspired this one, let me play you this one. And when we look up, all the Cullens have left the room to give Edward and Bella their space. After he's done playing the piano, Edward informs Bella that Alice did have a vision that they are going to be having some visitors soon. So for those who have seen the movie, that is going to be James, Victoria, and Laurent, and this is the first mentioning of them in the books so far. Edward is giving her a little bit more information on their family history, especially since they're in the house. They can go to Carlisle's office, they can look at things. And so let's have another history lesson, this time on Carlisle. Carlisle was born in London in the 1640s, or so they think, because time was recorded a little differently back then than it is now. He was born to a pastor, his mother died in childbirth, and his father was very intolerant of others. He was actually the one who would lead all of the witch hunts, chasing vampires, werewolves, anything of that nature. His father was in charge of hunting down. But when Carlisle's dad got old and he was no longer able to even participate in these hunts, he placed Carlisle in charge. And Carlisle actually discovered a coven of vampires living in the sewers. And so one night he puts together a mob, they're all going to the sewers, and they see one vampire come out. Now Carlisle, in retrospect, when he tells this story to others, says that this one vampire must have been so hungry, because if it had been well fed, it would have been able to wipe them out in under an hour. And he was so weak that he honestly couldn't even outrun the mob. And so he decided, guess we're gonna attack. And the first person he attacks is the one in front leading the mob, which is Carlisle. I believe that this one vampire killed 3 people, injured a couple others, and then got the heck out of Dodge because he was now fueled up and could leave. The thing with Carlisle though is he didn't completely drain Carlisle, and so Carlisle was just on the street kind of bleeding out, and Carlisle knew it was a fight or flight response, and he knew that if he were to stay, he would be the next one hunted and they would handle him. So he literally crawls his way out of the street and just kind of hides in an alley until his transformation is done. And it can take a few days for a transformation to finish depending on where the vampire bites you. It depends on where the vampire bites you. If a vampire bites you pretty close to the heart, it will take less time for the transformation to happen. And Carlisle, being raised to hate vampires, hate witches, hate werewolves, he tried to destroy himself, but he kept failing. He ended up swimming all the way to France, and he eventually found his passion in saving human lives. And it took Carlisle 2 centuries to gain enough self-control to where he could work in a hospital with human blood everywhere and not be fazed by it. When Carlisle was studying in Italy, he found others, a civilized group of vampires, if you will. Make note of this civilized group because in the next book, and so on and so forth, they play a big role. So their names are Arrow, Marcus, and Caius. They're all still around. As I said, we will see them soon. They will have a placement on our wall, literally in the next video. And these 3 try to fix his aversion to his natural food because Carlisle was essentially a vegetarian. He was not feeding on people. And they kept failing because Carlisle was like, this is not what I want to do. So he ends up leaving the group and going to America. And when the influenza hit Chicago, he came across Edward and he started his own little coven. And if you were thinking the history lesson is now over, no, because we have some more background information, but this time it's on Edward. Edward has almost been with Carlisle the whole time that he's been a vampire, except for 10 years where he fell off the wagon. After a couple of years of him being off the wagon, he came back to Carlisle. Edward thought that if he was some kind of vigilante, it would justify everything that he was doing, but in his mind, it really didn't feel any different. The guilt was still there. While Edward is explaining all of this, Alice and Jasper make their way into the room and tell them that they are about to play a game of baseball later today when it starts storming. Edward's like, yes, we are definitely going to play. I'm going to bring her back to Charlie because I've got to meet him, but we will see y'all around. And let me just tell y'all right here and right now, I am not a sports girl. I don't know a single rule or thing about sports. No. But if vampire baseball was a real thing, you best believe I would have season passes, front row, foam finger all day long. Oh, I would love it. Sign me up for that one. Go sports. When Edward brings Bella home so that he can meet Charlie and they can explain what they're doing today, someone's in Bella's driveway that does not make Edward happy. And if you're asking yourself, oh, who is it? It is Billy and Jacob. Edward is pissed, saying this is crossing the line with our treaty. This is too far, because he can literally read their thoughts. He knows what they are coming here to do. They have literally come here to warn Charlie about Bella and Edward being together. And Bella's like, before you step in and you start doing anything, let me try and handle it first. I've got this. And Edward says that's probably for the best because this child has no idea. And the mention of the word child is a little bit of a subtle foreshadowing to Team Edward, Team Jacob that will be coming in the future, because he really put some disdain behind the word child. Edward leaves and Bella's like, okay, I've only got a little bit to handle this madness before Charlie comes home and they try and ruin my life. Billy sees Bella walk up to them. Billy looks at Jacob and he goes, oh, can you go look in our truck for something? I left something in the truck. Go. I need you to go do something. You can tell he's sending him on a wild goose chase so that he can talk to Bella one-on-one. And Billy says, I've seen you've been spending a lot of time with the Cullens recently. And I just want to let you know that that's not a good idea. They don't have a good reputation. And Bella says, I am aware of this reputation, but I feel like that's a little undeserved since they're not even allowed on your reservation, right? She pauses and then she says, I think I might even be a little more informed than you over this topic. Billy's face goes a little blank and he goes, does Charlie know? And Bella avoids his answer saying, Charlie loves the Cullens. Billy says, it's not my business, but it might be Charlie's. And Bella goes, that means it's still my business because it's my dad. So I will decide what he gets to know and what he doesn't get to know. And Billy goes, just think about what you're doing. And AKA he means don't keep doing what you're doing. This is the moment where Jacob comes back from his wild goose chase and Billy's like, oh, my bad, dude. I completely forgot that I didn't even bring it with us. Let's go home. We're good. And then Billy says, goodbye, Bella. And remember to tell Charlie, pauses, that we stopped by. Charlie does end up coming home a little while after this. Bella tells Charlie that she spent the afternoon at the Cullen house and that she has a date with Edward tonight and he really wants to meet Charlie. And Charlie immediately goes, he's too old for you. If only you knew. If only you knew, sir. And Bella responds with, well, we're both juniors. Which one is Edwin? The youngest one. He's sort of my boyfriend. You said you weren't interested in any of the boys in town. Well, he actually lives outside of town, so technically he doesn't live in town. And Charlie's like, oh, technicality. And Bella goes, he's coming over in a few minutes. And as soon as she says that, the doorbell rings and she's like, actually, he's here now. And it is pouring rain outside, which is perfect because they're about to go play baseball. Edward comes in. He's like, hi, Chief Swan. So nice to meet you. I will keep Bella safe and she'll be home at a reasonable time tonight. That's genuinely the extent of the family introduction. They go outside and instead of it being the shiny silver Volvo, Edward is driving a monster Jeep. It is huge. Edward tells Bella that this is actually Emmett's vehicle and they're borrowing it because he doesn't think that her truck or his car will be okay to drive off-road. And Bella's like, oh, great. She sits in the front seat and instead of it being a seatbelt that she can easily just, it's a harness that she's having to put on. And the Jeep can only take them about halfway there and then the other half Edward is gonna have to carry her. Bella sticks with Esme throughout the game because Esme doesn't really play. She's just the referee to keep all of them in line and keep them honest. And they have to play baseball during a storm because when the ball collides with the bat, it is so loud that it almost sounds like thunder within itself. And it's just so cool. It's so cool. They play the game, they're having a great time, and then all of a sudden, Alice gasps, and Edward is immediately at Bella's side. And Alice is just apologizing, saying, I'm so sorry, I couldn't see it. I didn't see that this was happening. I'm so sorry, this isn't what my vision was. They're traveling too fast, that we only have about 5 minutes until they're here. And Edward realizes he does not have enough time to get Bella out of here without them smelling her scent. And if they smell her scent, they could go haywire and just attack the town of Forks. Who's to say? So it's safer to keep her here, have her take her hair down, and just hide behind Edward and hope for the best. He's like, don't move. And again, there's 3 of them, so it'll end up being James, Victoria, and Laurent once they show up. Carlisle is standing there being like, okay, everyone needs to calm down. We are going to continue the game and look as normal as we possibly can. Edward tells Esme, okay, take my spot in the outfield. I am standing by Bella. We are gonna be back here. And Esme asks Edward something that Bella can't hear, but she knows it's not a good thing. It's not a great and comforting question to anybody. Alice also says when she notices that Bella's taking her hair down, like, I don't think that's gonna help. I can still smell her from halfway across the field. Edward tells Bella what Esme just asked him because he can see that she's really worried right now and confused as to what is going on. Edward says that Esme asked if they were thirsty. Because remember, Edward can read their thoughts and they are in a radius to where he can read their minds. So he knows what's going through their heads right now. The game continues on, but they aren't playing the same way that they were. So instead of them like actually hitting the ball, running after it, they make sure that they stay within the tree line so that they are not getting too deep into the forest so that they don't miss it. AKA so that Emmett and Carlisle are still here when the trio arrives. There are 2 boys, 1 girl. And the girl is described to have bright red hair. Now our casting choice for right now is the same Victoria from movies 1 and 2. When we get to Eclipse, it's gonna be a different actress because she was replaced for some reason. Everything that they have is like pretty frayed. It's like button downs, very casual. They're not wearing shoes. And also all of their clothes are waterproof. And Bella describes that their eyes were burgundy. And this is a shade that she has never seen before, which is leading me to believe that they are indeed hungry. Their names are Laurent, Victoria, and James, and Laurent asks if they have room for 3 more. Carlisle is the one responding for everyone. He's like, oh, we're actually almost done, but how long are you guys in town for? We can always plan for another time. And Laurent honestly is a little vague, and so he doesn't truly answer the question. Instead, he's like, what is your hunting range? And Carlisle explains, we actually permanently live here, and so we try not to hunt around here so that we can stay hidden and be able to blend in. And as he's explaining this, he sees all 3 of them like, what, you permanently live here? How is that possible? Do you not feed? Like, he can see the wheels a turning. And so Carlisle was like, why don't you guys come back to our house and I will explain everything. As Carlisle has found the perfect way to get Edward and Bella along with Alice and Emmett to the Jeep. 3 things happen. 3 things happen really quickly. There's a gust of wind that moves Bella's hair. Edward stiffens. James says, so you brought us a snack. And he is now in a crouch position, almost like a predator ready to lunge. Carlisle immediately says, she's with us. To which Laurent responds with, she's a human. How is she with you? The only one to respond is Emmett, who goes, yeah? And he is staring daggers into James's eyes, like he is staring him down. Laurent says, guess we do have a lot to learn about each other, so we will take you up on that option to go talk things out at your house. He pauses and then he goes, of course, not harming the girl. His voice is definitely directed towards James at this moment in time. Carlisle nods, saying, Esme, Rosalie, Jasper, let's go take them to our house. This leaves Emmett, Alice, and Edward to try and get Bella to the Jeep as fast as they could. I almost just said as fast as humanly possible, but that is an incorrect statement. Just as fast as they can. When they get to the Jeep, Edward practically throws Bella into the backseat. He's the one driving, Alice is in shotgun, and Emmett is in the backseat trying to get Bella strapped into the harness while she's just like frozen, like, what just happened? And Edward is zooming. Like, if Bella thought that he was driving like a madman earlier, she ain't seen nothing until this moment. And he's just like grasping the wheel saying, we have got to get you out of here right now. We've got to leave this town. To which Bella is screaming saying, no, you need to take me home. She's trying to get the harness off of her. Emmett grabs her arms to try and get her to stop. And he doesn't let go either. So he's literally just holding her like this so that she'll stop fighting. And Alice tells Edward, pull over now. Edward fights her and she's like, pull over. Edward says, you don't understand. You weren't in his mind. He is a tracker. We are never getting away from him. We need to go. Alice is like, well, pull over, let's pull over. And Bella's in the backseat going, what about Charlie? Oh my gosh, Charlie, what about him? What's gonna happen? Edward is kind of ignoring everything. He's like, he is a tracker, he has smelled her. I know his plan. He is not planning on attacking until tonight, so we need to get you out of here. We only have a couple of hours. And Bella feels Emmett react to what Edward just said. Bella immediately knows that this is not good. She does not know what tracker means, but she knows that it's intense because this strong, huge man was fearful over that statement. Alice once again says, pull over, let's slow your roll, and we need to talk out our options. Edward's like, we don't have any options, we need to go. Emmett finally composes himself and says, we need to bring her back home. There are more of us. We can take them head on. We've got this. We're a strong family. And Edward explains to all of them that once James commits to a victim, there is no stopping him. He loves the hunt. He loves the game. And the only way to end this would be to destroy James and Victoria, because Victoria would definitely stay with him. Edward pauses, then he says, if there was a fight, Laurent would also side with them. So that would be 3 that we would have to destroy. Alice says, Edward, do you know that there's another option? And Edward honestly blows up at Alice. Like, to the point where Emmett and Bella are looking at each other like, whoa, what just happened? Because Alice isn't vocalizing this option because Edward can hear her thoughts. He knows what she's going to say and he doesn't like it. Bella says, well, I have a plan and I think it's a pretty good one. I think you need to take me home. I need to get into a fight with Charlie. We need to plan it to where the tracker can see that I'm getting into a fight with Charlie. I hit the road and we just get me out of there so that he will leave my dad alone and he will just follow me. And as soon as we do that and Charlie is safe, take me wherever you want to go. I don't care. I just want him safe. And Emmett's like, wow, that's actually a really good idea. Let me just say right here, right now, we were robbed of book Emmett. He is fantastic in the book. I absolutely love him and he needed more screen time. He really did. Edward shakes his head saying, we're not doing that plan. I do not want this guy 100 miles within Bella. And Alice is like, I don't see him attacking. He's just waiting for all of us to leave her alone. When Alice says this, Edward finally agrees and he says, you have 15 minutes to pack. I don't care if you do not finish what you're wanting to finish in 15 minutes. I will drag you out of there. You have 15 minutes. I will be in your room. Alice will be going to Carlisle and them to tell them the plan. And Emmett will be outside the house watching the perimeter. As soon as he says this, Edward whips the Jeep around and they are heading back to Forks. Mind you, Emmett is still holding Bella like this. And so Bella looks at him and goes, can you let me go now? And Emmett goes, oh yeah, of course, sorry, but my bad. Edward also adds to the plan to everyone in the car saying, once Bella has her things and they are out of the house, Emmett is to take the Jeep back to Carlisle's so that Edward and Bella can be on the run. And Emmett responds with, no, bro, I'm not leaving you. We are in this forever. We are in this together, and I think being apart is worse. Bella tells them, I think I need to do this plan alone. And everyone in the car is like, what? And she goes on saying, James was watching Edward and Emmett like a hawk. He knows that those are the 2 people that I would be with. Emmett and Alice are like, oh yeah, that is like such a great point. You are so right. He was staring y'all down. He's aware of this. You're right. Edward literally is looking at everyone like they have lost their minds. He says, do you really think it's in the best interest for you if I let you do this whole plan alone, no one with you? You really think that's gonna be what keeps you safe? Alice is the one who responds and she says, well, of course she won't be alone. Jasper and I will take care of her. And Bella nods her head saying, Edward, just wait a few days. Once we feel like we've completely lost him, you can come back to me and it will be completely fine. Now, Bella's plan currently is that they will end up going to Phoenix. They're predicting that in James's mind, he's thinking to himself, there's no way she would be dumb enough to go to the first place I would look. They're kind of trying to Uno reverse him over here, if you will. Emmett is completely on board with this plan, and so now he's trying to talk some sense into Edward being, listen, you and I both know that this does not end until there is a fight and they are defeated. If Bella's with us, she is going to end up hurt, or even worse. She needs to be off and away from this. Edward looks at Alice and says, can you and Jasper handle this? Emphasis on Jasper, by the way. And obviously Alice is like, yeah, we will be totally fine. Don't worry about it. And ladies and gents, we have a game plan in motion. And when they get to the house, Bella low-key sounds like she's saying a final goodbye to Edward, saying, please keep him safe. No matter what happens, keep him safe. And she goes on saying, no matter what, please know that I love you and I will always love you. and I don't regret anything. And then don't listen to another word that I say tonight. And then she goes to become an actress because she is running in the house screaming, leave me alone. And Charlie is now up from the couch. He was watching TV and is like, what is going on? And she went, we broke up. I'm leaving. I can't be here anymore. I'm going home. She's now sobbing, by the way. And Charlie's like, wait, what happened? This was your first date. I am so confused. She just repeats herself saying, I broke up with him. She goes into her room. She slams the door. Edward is already there and he's already throwing literally anything he can find into a bag as quickly as he possibly can. Once she has her bag, she leaves her room. She runs into poor Charlie, who already sounds very heartbroken. It's like, I thought you liked him. What happened? You can't just leave in the middle of the night. That's not safe. Let's take a minute. Let's take a day. Let's take a week and think this through. He pauses. Then he says, if you just wait a little bit, Renee will be home and you can talk to her. This makes Bella jerk her head saying, what? What do you mean Renee will be home? Charlie says, yeah, I've heard that Florida is not working out well and that if the heat doesn't get signed back on within this week, she will be back in Arizona. And Bella is now going, oh no, not another person that's probably gonna end up being incorporated into this plan. They could get hurt, oh no. But she can't let Charlie see this because Charlie doesn't know what's going on. Bella shakes off that thought. She hops back into her plan and she says, I really hate forks. Call you tomorrow when I've calmed down. She leaves, gets in the truck. She's driving and she's shaking and Edward, when she's already kind of driving, hops in and he literally lifts her out of the driver's seat while the car is still moving, by the way, and he starts driving for her while she's on the verge of tears / kind of starts to cry a bit because what she told Charlie was exactly what Renee said when she left. Or it's allegedly what Renee said, because in my opinion, I don't think Bella truly knows what Renee said, for the simple fact being she was 2 months old when Renee packed her bags and left. So I feel like this is an alleged quote. Alleged. Also, this scene is a lot worse in the movie. I did not feel like crying when I read this one, but oh, the movie pulled at my heartstrings and I'm just like, justice for Charlie. Also, can we give perspective for dear old Charlie? Charlie believes that this was Edward and Bella's first date. First date. To where Bella has like lost her mind as I'm leaving, I broke up with him, I'm going back home, yada, 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 emotional mess. And Charlie's just like, what on earth could this boy have done for you not only to break up with him on a first date, but you're leaving completely? Like, imagine what's going through his mind. We do learn that the tracker overheard the last part of that conversation, and so their plan is working so far. And the tracker is currently running behind them. Alice is in the car directly behind the truck, and then all of a sudden, Bella feels someone hop in the tailbed of the truck, and she's like, oh my gosh, it's the tracker, it's the tracker. And Edward looks at her going, no. That's just Emmett. I'm in the tracker's thoughts and James is not hunting tonight, don't worry. Bella is having, oh, woe is me. Why me? Out of every single person in this town, in the world, why does James want me? And Edward responds with, when I defended you, I made it worse. He is not used to being challenged. And we have now just made this the most exciting game he has ever experienced. There's no backing down at this point. Edward also adds, if I wouldn't have defended you, James would have attacked you right then and there. So either way, it was a lose-lose situation for us. We get a real quick amount of vampire lore. The only way to get rid of a vampire is to completely tear them limb from limb and then burn all of the remains. Also, here's some tea that we found out. Laurent is embarrassed by James's actions. Embarrassed. And he might not fight with them. That is how upset he is over it. They make it to the Cullen house and immediately Emmett is at the passenger side door and he is hauling Bella in. The book described this as Emmett carrying Bella as if she were a football into the house. That is how he's like holding her right now. And I am trying to envision that, and that is the funniest thing to me. I just want to emphasize one more time. Emmett is the one carrying her like a football, not Edward. Emmett. Laurent is still in the house, by the way, and he is just saying, I'm so sorry. I will not fight with you, and I wish you all the best of luck, but I'm not fighting against them. There is a reason that their coven has been around for so long, and it's because James is unbeatable. He's lethal, is the exact word that Laurent said. Lethal. And the book says that Edward roared at this comment, and I don't know what that means. I really don't. Like, truly, what noise has come out of Edward in that moment? Because to me, it's a funny one, and I don't think that that is what was meant to happen in that scenario. But alas, he roared anyway. Another little side note, James's coven has been around for 300 years. That is longer than the Cullen coven, other than Carlisle, because he was first turned in 1918. So from 1918 onward is this coven. Again, minus Carlisle. As soon as Laurent says he's not going against James, he leaves, and Esme sprints to this little hidden keypad. She clicks in all the buttons, and every single window on all of the walls, mind you, because it's a very open house, is now being covered by huge metal shutters, essentially making the house in like a little lockdown zone. Edward fills them in on their plan. He looks at Rosalie and says, will you go change clothes with Bella right now? And Rosalie says, well, what is she to me? She just keeps putting all of us in danger. Emma's like, Rose? And Edward looks at Esme as if Rosalie didn't respond, didn't exist, nothing. And says, Esme, will you please give Bella some of your clothes and get into Bella's? They're doing this to confuse the tracker because now her scent is going to be on Esme, and hopefully some of Bella's actual scent will be masked by Esme's clothes. Obviously, Esme agrees, and Esme scoops Bella into her arms and they race upstairs. This is another thing that I thought would have been really interesting in the movie, because I love that they keep noting that every single member of like the Cullen family or any vampire is scooping Bella into their arms because she's so delicate and fragile and almost like a doll because she's human. Because it does put some things in perspective, that while she's out here looking like Snow White, beautiful, delicate, yada, 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 she's still so much more powerful, and she scoops Bella into her arms because that is how fragile Bella is to everyone and everything. Especially since, yes, she could have just hopped on Esme's back, but I think that this packed a little bit more of a punch, if you will. When they get back downstairs, Alice and Jasper have been told that they're taking the Mercedes because they are going to Phoenix, Arizona. They are two vampires going to Phoenix, Arizona, where it is bright and sunny all the time. They need the dark tinted windows to even have a chance of not getting seen. And then Carlisle tells Edward and Emmett that we will be taking the Jeep. And this is the first mention of Carlisle sticking with Edward the whole time. He is on Edward's side. He is not leaving. And Alice says that James is going to be tracking the boys and that Victoria is going to be tracking Esme and Rosalie. And I kind of like imagine them in like a little sports huddle, if you will, being like, go team, we have a beautiful plan, let's get this done. And Edward goes over to Bella, grabs her face, and he kisses her in front of everybody. And he disappears immediately after, Bella noting that he had a dead look in his eyes. Esme and Rosalie wait a few minutes, and then they also start to leave in the opposite direction. They wait a little longer until Alice gets a phone call saying, yep, y'all are good to go. Jasper looks at Bella and he says, you're wrong, by the way. What you are feeling now is completely wrong because you are worth it. A reminder that Jasper has that subtle power of being able to feel exactly what everyone is feeling. Bella wakes up, and this should be a 3-day drive to Arizona, and they finish it in less than 1. Obviously, because they drive like maniacs. And Jasper asks Bella, where is the airport? We need to stick close to it in case we have to leave ASAP. They're staying in a hotel, and Jasper and Alice literally can't leave throughout the day because it is bright. Like, that UV is shining. Jasper is looking at Bella being like, you're okay, you're safe, why are you freaking out? Bella's not doing anything, by the way. Like, she's just sitting there, but he can feel her anxious energy. And Bella explains, well, Laurent said that James is unstoppable. I don't want anything to happen to you or your family. I don't think that I'm gonna be able to handle that. And they respond with, our family is so strong, and our only fear right now is losing you. And Bella's like, I'm so grateful that all of y'all are teaming together, but I don't think that one person is, and they stop her from finishing, worth it, because we all knew where she was going with this. And Alice says, you haven't lived with Edward as long as we have. You haven't had to deal with him being alone, being miserable. You haven't seen the pre-Bella and post-Bella Edward. And I will not be the one responsible for him losing his will to live. We have a little bit of a status update from our teammates, if you will. We learned that the boys got James to go all the way up north before they lost him and he realized what was going on. The girls went west, and once Victoria realized, oh, that's actually not Bella, Rosalie and Esme decided to go back to Forks and just guard Charlie's house to make sure that no one's going in there. Alice finally tells Bella how one becomes a vampire because Edward didn't want Bella to know. And Alice is like, well, I don't know if it's my place. And Bella's like, well, I would like to know just in case this is like the end, like, just tell me. And Alice is like, well, you pulled my arm, I'll tell you, here you go. And Alice says that vampires are venomous, but it's not the venom that kills you. It just incapacitates you to where you can't move. That way, if we want to finish feeding and finish you off, we can. You can't move. It burns and it hurts. But if this venom spreads and it reaches the heart, that is when the transformation really takes place. And the closer the bite is to the heart, like I said earlier, the faster the transformation. It can take days, maybe even a week, maybe even longer, honestly, if the bite is far enough away from the heart. But it hurts the person so much that the person would rather choose death than go through this transformation. She also says that it is so hard to do what Carlisle does, aka creating this little family and turning everyone into vampires, because vampires are like sharks. Literally picture Finding Nemo right now. They get a sniff of blood, a taste of blood, and it's a frenzy. They black out and there's really no stopping them at that point. Time has passed and suddenly Alice jumps up saying something has changed, something has changed. He's changing his ideas. What is going on? I'm seeing a room. There are mirrors everywhere. It's a dark, dark room. And he's watching TV? No, wait. He's putting a VCR into the TV. And they're very confused by this vision. Alice herself is like, what does this mean? But the importance of this vision is that James has changed his plan for some reason. The vision only changes when the person that we are kind of taking a sneak peek into has shifted something. So his original plan is different. He's adapted, if you will. So whatever decision James has just made is going to take him into a room filled with mirrors. Before Bella can even ask Alice anything, Carlisle calls. She's explaining everything to Carlisle. You know that Emmett and Edward can hear everything, and then after a while, Alice hands the phone to Bella and goes, here, he wants to talk to you. It's Edward. Edward says that they are currently in Vancouver. They lost James. They think James is going back to Forks to start over. So Edward is coming to Phoenix to get Bella and they are going somewhere safe. He swears that he is going to get her somewhere safe where they can be together forever. And then the phone call ends. Alice is trying to draw the vision and Bella looks at it and she goes, that looks like my old dance studio. Jasper's head immediately goes up and he goes, where was your dance studio? Like around the corner from where my mom lived. Here in Phoenix? And when he says that, him and Alice look at each other like, oh, this man is not in Forks. They don't say that, but you can tell that's what they're thinking. At least we can tell that because Bella cannot tell that. It is the next day. There is a new vision. Alice is drawing it out, sketching it out. It's the room with the VCR. There's light. Bella is looking at it and she goes, oh my God. That's my mom's house. He's in my mom's house right now. Alice quickly runs to the phone. She talks to Edward. She comes back in the room. She's like, they're coming to get you right now. Like literally they are going to be here even faster than they said they were going to be. Like they are on their way. They need to take you somewhere safe. Jasper has left the room because he needs to check them out of the hotel. Bella is flipping a lid saying, oh my God, he literally came here for my mom. He is going to hurt everyone that I love just to try and get to me. There's no end for this. I might be safe, but everyone that I've ever loved is in danger. Alice gets another phone call and my oh my, is this convenient timing? Because do you know who it is? Do we have any guesses? I'll give you like 3 seconds. It's Renee on the phone. And Alice goes, oh, Bella, I guess this is for you. And so she hands the phone to Bella and all we hear is Renee going, Bella, 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 in a panic voice. And then we hear a man telling Bella, don't say anything until I tell you to. I don't want to hurt your mother, so just do what I say and you'll be fine. Repeat after me. No, Mom, I'm fine. Stay home. She whispers this and the man says, go into another room and say it again. Bella can literally feel eyes on her. She can feel Alice watching her. So she goes into her room, she closes the door, and he says, I need you to get away from there. No. Do you think you'd be able to do that if your mother's life depended on it? Yes. Go to your mom's house and call the number that I have left by the phone. I'll tell you where to go from there. Oh, and say thank you, Mom, and then go back to the others. Bella notes that she is so relieved when she enters the room that Jasper is not there because he would have known immediately what just happened because he could feel it. I have a really big side note here. This is kind of just a conversation for us. Is vampire hearing really not that good or something? Like how was Alice not able to overhear this entire phone conversation? That's kind of my only plot hole right here, right now, unless they just are horrible at hearing and need a hearing aid. Like, anyway, Alice has another vision and Jasper's like, oh my gosh, what is it? And Alice says, Bella? And Bella obviously responds because she said her name, being like, yeah, I'm right here, what's up? And then Bella realizes, the vision is me. Bella knows that this vision is happening right now because she's decided to meet James and listen to James. She's hoping that the two of them don't realize that it's Bella's decision that's affecting everything. And so she's trying to be as calm as she possibly can so that Jasper doesn't detect this, but Bella knows what this means. Okay, once again, this is how Alice's powers work. She only sees visions for people when they're on a specific course. So when they make a new decision and they change the course, the vision itself will change. And no matter what this tiny decision is, it will affect the future. So she never saw Bella in the room with mirrors until Bella made the decision to meet James. That tiny little phone call and that tiny little changed her vision. They get to the airport, and luckily for Bella, Edward is getting off at the largest terminal, so it's going to take a hot second to get to them. She's been putting off getting breakfast because that's how she's going to escape. And so when she gets to a specific part of the airport, she looks at them and goes, I'm actually really hungry. Can I go get breakfast? And Alice is like, sure, I'll come with you. And she's like, no. I want Jasper to come with me. They both think that's kind of weird, but they're like, sure, Jasper can go with you. And then on their way, they're passing several different restaurants, several different little cafes, coffee shops. And Bella's like, that doesn't sound good. No. Because Bella is trying to get to a specific bathroom. When she passes this bathroom, she's like, oh, actually, I'm going to run in real quick. I'll meet you out. No big deal. The reason she wanted this bathroom is because this one in the airport has 2 exits. And so she races out the other side. Jasper never sees her. She makes it all the way downstairs. She sees a shuttle. It's going to a random hotel, and she's like, I gotta get here. Before they realize that I'm gone, I've got to get on the shuttle. Makes it to a hotel. I think she gets a cab driver to take her where she needs to go, to her mother's house. That's in Scottsdale, I believe. She gets there, she calls the number, and James answered, and he's like, wow, that was a lot faster than I thought that it would be. Good for you and good for your mom. Perfect. Remember that old dance studio you used to dance at? That's where I need you to go right now. See you soon. XOXO, Gossip Girl. Bella goes to the dance studio and she hears her mom in a panic again, saying her name over and over and over again. But Bella realizes when there's another voice that this is a tape. And so James never had Renee. Renee never came home. She is still in Florida, and Bella has been tricked. And honestly, she admits that she's not mad that he tricked her. And James says, guessing you're going to tell your little boyfriend to avenge your life? Oh, guys, I forgot this part. Oh my gosh. I completely forgot. Before Bella was going with all of them to meet Edward at the airport, she told Alice that she was going to write a letter to Charlie so that Alice could give it to him whenever they got back to Forks. But in reality, Bella was writing a letter to Edward, telling him, like, I love you. This is just what had to happen. None of this is your fault. I don't regret you at all. Don't come after me. Don't fight him. Let it be. So when James is here asking Bella, like, is your boyfriend gonna come and avenge me? Bella's like, I hope not. I told him in a letter not to. And James says, well, that is a little disappointing because getting you here was not as hard as I thought it was going to be. It was not the chase I was wanting. All Victoria had to do was just see Edward getting a flight to Arizona to confirm that this is where you were. Trying to trick me, thinking that I wouldn't believe you would come here. And we just had to see where the flight was going. So yes, I am hoping that your boyfriend will try to avenge you. And in fact, I'm gonna leave a letter of my own for dear old Edward. James then grabs a video camera saying, I don't think Edward is going to resist coming after me once he sees this. We are about to get so much background knowledge right here, like a little story that's going to give us key information about one of our characters I told you to put a pin in. So let's talk about it. James says that he wants to rub in his victory because he has only had one person escape him before. He has only failed once. And this is because there was a vampire that was very, very fond of James's victim, and he worked at the mental institution where his victim was. And so when the vampire found out of James's plan, of James wanting this one person, the vampire realized that the only way to save her would be to turn this girl into a vampire. And this girl was in an institution because she had these weird visions. In the 1920s, this was not something people took lightly. Yes, the only person to have escaped James was Alice. And that is why Alice has no recollection of who turned her, why she was turned, anything of that. Because the vampire that changed Alice, James attacked because he took the game away from him. Full circle moment, and James recognized Alice right off the bat. And that is the craziest little twist to me, and I actually love that. I really do. Once Bella hears this, she's kind of shell-shocked and she's like, I gotta get out of here. She tries to run, but obviously you can't outrun a vampire. And she doesn't know if he kicks her, if he throws her, what. She just knows that she collides into something and is thrown across the room of mirrors. So she lands smack dab in a mirror, shattering it, and she is on the floor. Since she shattered the mirror, she is now bleeding, and James rushes over to her, snaps her leg. She is in so much pain, she is bleeding, and he is smiling at her in a very creepy way, and she knows there's no way he's gonna be able to resist her now. This is it. And so she is slowly fading in and out of consciousness. But in this dream state, she hears an angel speaking to her. This angel is calling out saying, please, please, please. The angel is crying, calling out to Carlisle in a very calm voice next to the angel's, which we can assume is Carlisle's, is like, she has a concussion, she's bleeding out, her leg is broken, her ribs are probably broken too, I don't know if it's punctured anything, like this is not good. Bella is now mumbling saying, it burns, it burns, it burns, put out the fire, please, please, please put out the fire. And they're like, what is that? What is she talking about? What is she talking about? And then they realize that on her hand, right here, if you can see that in a non-weird way, James bit her and she was slowly transforming / the venom is slowly going through her body. And Carlisle is no longer calm. He looks at Edward and goes, if you suck out the venom, that might do the trick. That might stop the transformation from happening. And Edward's like, why me? You have way more self-control than me. And Carlisle's like, well, I've got to stop the bleeding over here. I've got to hold her leg. She has a lot of injuries. If you are going to stop the transformation, I've got to keep her alive. And Carlisle says, it's completely up to you, but I've got to get this bleeding under control. Edward loves her so much that Edward is willing to try. And at first, the pain is even worse. Like, it is sending the worst burning feeling through Bella's body, and then soon it stops. She feels perfectly fine. Edward says that it now tastes clean, and he thinks that he did it. He then tells Bella that he loves her, he picks her up, and he carries her out of the dance studio. You definitely get to see a whole lot more of an action sequence in the movie, but I think it makes sense what we just saw since everything is in Bella's POV. Since she was drifting in and out of consciousness, obviously she wouldn't see everything go down. Bella wakes up in the hospital and Edward is right there with her. Edward tells her that he was almost too late, that James tricked all of them. We told your mom and Charlie, by the way, that you fell down 2 flights of stairs and through a window. And we also told them that I tried to come get you back to apologize for whatever you may or may not have told Charlie that I did. And I brought my dad with me, and so when you were coming to see me in my hotel room, that's where you tripped and fell. So no mention of the dance studio in this scenario. And Bella's like, well, how did you guys end up breaking all of the windows? Like, that makes no sense. I didn't fall in a hotel. And Edward's like, Alice actually had a really fun time making sure that this was factual. So she went to the hotel and she shattered all the windows. Edward tells Bella that she had to have a blood transfusion and he hated it because she did not smell like herself for a very long time. So she's been out of consciousness for honestly a couple of days. She asks him how he was able to do this and he says, I don't know, I must really love you. And we learn that Edward was the one to pull James off of Bella. Emmett and Jasper were the two that handled James, and as soon as they handled James, they had to leave the room. There was so much blood everywhere that they were not able to stay in this room. He also explained that Alice watched the tape that James was making, and so now Alice knows everything about herself. She knows how she became a vampire, and everything is slowly getting pieced together. So she is currently dealing with this wave of emotions. Edward quickly jumps to the chair on the other side of the room because he hears Renee coming, so he needs to pretend to be asleep. And when Renee walks in, she mumbles under her breath, "He never leaves." Renee tells Bella that Renee and Phil no longer have to leave Florida and that Bella can come live with them in Jacksonville. She's gonna absolutely love it. And Bella's like, oh, congrats to Phil, but I'm not leaving Forks. And Renee's like, what? You want to stay in Forks? Why? Is it because of this boy? I think this boy might be in love with you, by the way. Are you in love with him? Bella says, well, I'm pretty crazy about him. You're too young for these kind of emotions. Oh my, oh my. Renee also says that she's excited for Phil to get into town because she's been sleeping here due to the fact that this area is no longer safe. Apparently, someone went to the ballet studio and burned it to the ground. Renee says, love you, goodbye, yada, yada, yada. Edward wakes back up and Edward says, I'm really surprised you don't want to go live in Jacksonville with your mom. And Bella doesn't even think twice about this. And she just says, well, yeah, you would have to stay inside the whole time. And Edward's like, well, if you went to Jacksonville, I wouldn't go with you. I don't think that that's safe. Bella literally starts breaking down. Like her heart monitor is going crazy. And he's like, okay, calm down. I'm not leaving you. We're not leaving. We're still together. We're not leaving. She literally makes him promise and swear that he will never leave her. Bella also says, I don't get why you just didn't let me transform. And Edward groans saying, oh, Alice told you, didn't she? And Bella nods her head. And he says, I can't do it and I won't do it to you. Bella then goes, well, you're not the only vampire I know. Edward goes, she wouldn't dare do that. To which Bella says, that's what she saw in her vision, wasn't it? When you were so angry at her, that is what she saw, me being a vampire. It's what's gonna happen. Edward then says, you know as well as I do that visions can change. She also saw that you were dead and here you are, alive and kind of well. Bella drifts back to sleep, and as she's falling back to sleep, she says, well, I'm betting on Alice. And that is the end of the first book, but we have an epilogue. So let's talk about the epilogue. The epilogue takes place in May. So we went from March to May, and Bella is still in a leg cast. And she is all dressed up. Edward is helping her to her car. She also has one stiletto heel on, so she has a leg cast and then a stiletto heel, which is a combo for sure in the movie. I think she's wearing Converse. And Edward pulls out his phone and it's Charlie, and he's like, oh, hi Charlie, what's up? Charlie is not a fan of Edward, understandably so, because his daughter nearly left him, left town, and also got so injured when she saw him the next time. So understandably so, he's not a big fan of Edward. So they now have curfews, by the way, designated hangout times. Charlie's like, not letting you out of my sight. But Charlie calls Edward and Edward laughs out loud and is like, you know what, let me handle it, put him on the phone. And Edward goes, hi, Tyler, yeah, Bella's unavailable tonight and she's gonna be unavailable every other night. So you can back off. No offense, enjoy your evening. And everything clicks into place for Bella because Bella's like, oh my God, you're taking me to prom? Because remember, Tyler was going around telling everyone that he was taking Bella to prom, even though he was never going to. He was so delusional that he was like, I'm gonna show up at her house and take Bella to prom. When she's literally in a relationship with Edward, like, what is his issue? But that's so funny that I will allow it because that is hilarious to me. Edward tells her that he doesn't want Bella missing out on any of these human things because of him. And when they get to the prom, we see Rosalie, Alice, Jasper, Emmett, all of them, and all of her human friends. But when they're in prom, Jacob shows up and he's like, can I interrupt? Can we have a dance? And Edward's like, sure. They're dancing to some extent because Bella can't dance really because her leg is broken. So they're just like awkwardly swaying, I guess. I don't really know. And Jacob says that his dad paid him $20 to come talk to Bella. And Bella knows exactly why Billy told Jacob to come here. And so she's like, well, hope you enjoy it because I don't want to hear what you have to say. And Jacob's like, well, I am enjoying myself, but the girl that I like, she's taken, sadly. He also says that she looks very, very pretty. Jacob does tell Bella what his dad paid him to say, and Jacob says that they want her to break up with Edward. And also that, in his words, will be watching. Bella's like, well, tell him thanks, I guess. And the song ends, and Jacob hesitates, like he doesn't want to take his hands off of her waist. And he's like, do you want to dance again? We could dance again. And Edward comes in, he's like, no, we're good. I'm actually gonna take my date back. Jacob leaves. Edward says, I'm not mad at Billy, but his son is irritating me. One, he made me break my promise to never let you go tonight. And then two, he called you pretty. And that's basically an insult to you because you are so much more than that. The two of them actually go outside together, so they have a little bit of privacy while they're dancing. And she tells him that she thought the reason he was having her dress up was because he changed his mind about her becoming a vampire. And Edward laughs, saying, did you think it was a black tie occasion becoming a vampire? Like, what? And she tells him, like, I'm ready to be with you forever. Please just turn me into one. And Edward's like right now? And so he dips her and he ends up like putting his lips really close to her neck, but he just kisses her. He doesn't actually bite her. And he says, there's no way you honestly thought I was gonna give in that easily, right? And he adds, I'm going to stay with you forever. Isn't that enough? She says, that's enough for now. I love you more than anything in the world. And he says, that's enough for forever. And he kisses her neck one more time. And that is the end of the first Twilight book. If y'all made it to the end of the video, leave an emoji or something down below to let me know that y'all actually made it to the very end, because holy cow, this is a long video. New Moon will be up really soon, and that is a crazy time, and we're gonna add more to our cast. Please let me know down below if y'all want the additional Twilight books or if you just want the original 4 books. Because I can do Midnight Sun, I can do Life and Death, Bree Tanner, any of that. I just need to know. But that's all I got for this video. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I will see y'all hopefully very soon. And if you enjoyed this video, hit the little like button. If you want to see more content from me, make sure that you're subscribed. That's all I got. So love y'all. Thanks for being here.